He was known as one of the strongest hunters alive, but he dared to defy the world's order, simply because he stood at the absolute pinnacle as the supreme necromancer. This made him a target, and the gods themselves sentenced him to death. To get the job done, the other top 7 hunters obliterated an entire city just to bury him. But in his final moments, he activates the clock of Chronos, rewinding time itself and sending him back to the past. Now, armed with the knowledge of the future, he carries the father of the gods on his shoulder and begins his path to the ultimate revenge. One day, the world was plunged into chaos due to monsters emerging from portals that suddenly appeared. The ones who saved us were the hunters, who awakened with the power of the system. By exploring these portals, they grew stronger, ranking from 1 to 7 stars. And the 7 hunters who reached 9 stars, backed by the protection of the constellations, established the power of the 7 great families and ruled the world. But he was the first in human history to reach 9 stars without the protection of a constellation. However, the 7 great families and the constellations decided that someone like him could cause the collapse of the world's order. And so, in the eastern capital, consumed by hellfire, the Romanov family showed up. Their goal, to kill the 9-star hunter. They are one of the 7 great families and the magical bloodline vying for dominance over Eurasia. Amidst the ruins of the completely destroyed city, our boy is standing there holding a broken pocket watch. Looking up, he faces an old geezer, his arch nemesis, the damned Dmitri. The old man says that even he, who became a 9-star hunter without the protection of the constellations, has finally met his end. And this guy is Dmitry Andreevich Romanov, the magic king, the incarnation of Odin, and a hunter who reached 9 stars. But our MC asks what the reason is for trying to kill him. Is it really because he didn't receive the protection of the constellations, or because he refused to become a subordinate to their 7 great families? Hearing this, the old man just laughs, saying it's for both reasons. The constellations are crying out for his death, so there's not much he can do. If someone could become that strong all by themselves, what would be the point of the constellations? The immortal king, who became peerless without the backing of the constellations and the 7 great families, is nothing but a threat. Besides, the 7 great families are already too busy just keeping an eye on each other. And that was our MC's title, the immortal necromancer king Ryoga Chinen. Pissed off, Ryoga says that's just a bunch of bullshit. But Dmitri tells him that as a necromancer, he goes against providence and tramples on the world's order by manipulating the dead. In a battle between 9-star hunters, the power of the constellations decides victory or defeat. But he chose the impure power that defies the logic of life and death, and was abandoned by the constellations. So that's the difference between the two of them. But our MC isn't going to admit defeat. He says it seems Dmitri is pretty convinced that using Odin's power as a shield is enough to kill him. But he asks if Dmitri knows why he stayed quiet, listening to all his nonsense up until now. It's simply because of this. He then activates his ultimate power, the dark magic rebirth, the lunar eclipse technique, the transcendence of the field of death. Dmitri, a bit surprised by this skill, mentions he has a transfer technique fueled by souls, and it seems he still had plenty of power left. So, because of that, he'll also treat him to his strongest magic. He declares that today he will destroy even the soul of the immortal king. Then he summons his ultimate power. Our MC, surprised by this, realizes the old geezer intends to use the Eye of Odin, and with the field of death, he knows he can't beat it. What he's witnessing now is the absolute enchantment, the so-called Eye of Odin. And so this eye, looking more like a meteor, charges straight at Ryoga. But even in the face of death, he smiles, figuring that since he's going to die right now anyway, it doesn't hurt to try. The old man, caught off guard by this, asks why he's smiling. And then our boy takes out his pocket watch. Only he knows that this watch is an artifact capable of interfering with time, the pocket watch of Chronos. At that moment, he detects the power of a constellation. Thus, Odin's power crosses paths with the watch, and the system announces that the power of the constellation has dwelled within the pocket watch of Chronos, satisfying the activation conditions. Consequently, it is regressing to the past of the player, Ryoga Chinen, and now time is turning back. In our MC's head, he realizes the activation conditions are now complete. They are, being a 9-star player, and injecting the power of a constellation into the artifact. Since he doesn't have the power of a constellation, he just had to borrow the power from that damn Dmitri. So the flash blinds the old man. He asks what the hell he's doing, and Ryoga replies that Odin's power, the constellation he's so proud of, he'll gratefully use it. And the next time they meet, he will definitely crush him, and the 7 great families together. And just like that, the power of Chronos' watch is activated, and our MC regresses in time. In the very next second, he wakes up back in his youth. He really didn't think it would work, so he's quite shocked at first. But looking around, he notices that this place is definitely the old house he used to live in. It seems the magic worked, but he gets super pissed thinking about that bastard Dmitri who tried to kill him for such a petty reason. He just has to wait and see what he'll do to him. Looking back at the watch, he notices that the relic's durability is now 1 out of 10. He himself wasn't sure if using the power of another constellation, one he didn't have a contract with, would work, but it looks like taking the risk was the right choice. He realizes he returned to that exact day 23 years ago, right after he left the orphanage, when the system suddenly appeared announcing that the player Ryoga Chinen had been chosen chosen by the system, and that he should choose a class that suits the player, taking into account his inherent traits and talents. As his inherent trait, he has a clear mind, where his heart doesn't waver in any situation, giving him resistance to all mental attacks. And now he can select his class, of which there are 3 types: fighter, mage, and priest. Our boy thinks this is to be expected. In the beginning, there are only very basic classes. Before his regression, he chose the magical bloodline without thinking much about it. But now he doesn't need to rush to pick his class, because this time he's going to become even stronger and definitely survive until the end. He will make full use of the information he obtained when he was a 9-star hunter. So, a few hours later, at the hunter's market, our boy runs into the clerk, who tells him he's very welcome to the store. But right as she's about to start her sales pitch, he cuts her off instantly, asking if they have a ring of deep darkness there. This leaves her pretty surprised. She tells the customer that it's a cursed item, but he says he knows and asks how much it costs. Later, upon leaving the store, he remembers how she told him, looking quite worried, that they are not responsible for any losses after the purchase. And even so, she asked if he still wanted to buy it. Our MC said yes, he wanted to buy it. He knows it's pretty incomprehensible, since no one normally would pay 2 million just like that for a ring that applies debuffs to their own body. But what they don't know is that there's a secret hidden here, in this exact ring that nobody knows about. And for the one who, after equipping it, repels the curse residing within the ring, they will be granted the knowledge and power of necromancy, the foundation of necromancers. And obviously our boy is very confident in his necromancy power. Inside his mind, the scenery changes, and he appears in a sort of fog-filled place. Looking ahead, he recognizes that his curse takes the form of that damn Dimitri. Dimitri speaks very arrogantly, calling him a monster who manipulates rotting flesh, and asks if he really thinks he can beat him without the protection of a constellation. And he should know that, without the protection of a constellation, he takes no damage. And even he, a necromancer abandoned by the constellations, even if he went back to the past to fight, could never defeat him. Then, he attacks our MC without a second thought. But our MC is highly confident. Without blinking a single eye, that power hits him dead on, quote-unquote, because in reality it doesn't even touch him. The system announces that he has overcome the trial of the Ring of Deep Darkness. Thus, the power of necromancy residing in the ring has been awakened. Ryoga explains that the method to break the curse of the Ring of Darkness is, basically, not to resist, and it was by knowing this that he became the first necromancer in the world. From what they say, it's impossible to face the 7 great families without the protection of the constellations. But then what he has to do now is simply create his own constellation. As a necromancer, and just like that, after acquiring the necromancy skill, his cursed rings level went from rare to epic, which gets Ryoga pretty hyped up. And now for his class selection, another option appears, and he instantly chooses the necromancer class. The system explains that a necromancer is a class that wields power through corpses and souls. As a bonus for his first class choice, he acquired a trait called Guide of Death, allowing him to convert magic power into spiritual power. This trait reduces spiritual power consumption by 20%. Our boy, quite happy, says this is a great start. But looking at the other window, he realizes he only has 2 usable skills. The first one is called Raise the Dead level 1, which is basically the classic Arise from solo leveling. And the second is Bone Control, also level 1, where he can infuse magic power into bones and move them at will. He comments to himself that since he regressed, his rank also went back to the beginning, and even with a necromancer's knowledge burned into his mind by the ring, he couldn't use advanced skills. It seems he can't escape the star ranking scale set by the system. Although he can grow stronger up to 7 stars following the system's rules, reaching 9 stars isn't possible through normal methods, as it's a realm of transcendence, and despite becoming a necromancer so early, it still isn't enough. He knows that to beat that guy Dimitri, he needs a guardian star. Because of this, after some time, our boy travels to the Temple of Kronos located in Greece. He went there because he knows that ancient constellations that lost their light after being defeated by Zeus and the Olympian gods, titans who accepted Olympus's victory like the sun god Helios, can still act as constellations, but the owner of this pocket watch is completely different. Now standing in front of Kronos' altar, he wants to meet the fallen constellation. So, he takes his watch and strikes it right against the monument. Instantly, his artifact starts to glow, transporting him to another place in the middle of space-time. At that very moment, our boy recognizes this is the exact place he wanted to be. And right behind him, a gigantic being appears, asking who he is, and what fool dares to commit such rudeness before him. This gigantic being is basically Kronos himself, but looking at him, our MC isn't scared at all. He says he's glad to see him. Kronos, the deposed king of the Titans. Hearing this bold statement, Kronos glares at him quite seriously. Shortly after, he looks at the watch, calls him a little being, and asks if he's the one who turned back time. Our boy confirms that it's him in the flesh. Kronos, quite curious, says that for a human, it seems he was someone considerably strong to succeed in regressing. He then asks why he awakened him. Our boy thinks about how Kronos, the father of Zeus of Olympus, the god who swallowed his own children, heard the prophecy that the Titan bloodline would be destroyed. He had everything stolen by Olympus and is now just a forgotten name. The MC knows the flame of revenge against Olympus is still burning in his chest, so he asks if by any chance he doesn't want to get revenge on those guys. Kronos asks what he just said. Ryoga replies that if he becomes his guardian star, he'll help him with his revenge. Kronos gets extremely pissed instantly, saying a mere human dares to want to say in his revenge. He asks if the boy really thought someone of his level could take down Olympus. Ryoga tells him that he reached 9 stars without the protection of any constellation, and among the people he wants revenge on, Zeus is also included. He knows it's not just the Romanov family, but all the 7 great families who were complicit are his enemies. Ryoga tells Kronos that if they defeat the Karamanlis family, which houses an Olympian constellation as its guardian star, Olympus will lose its influence on Earth. Kronos fires back that, for someone using revenge as an argument, his ambition is quite small. He acknowledges the boy must be someone powerful enough to activate the pocket watch. But thinking that someone seeking his protection would continue down the path of a necromancer after regressing doesn't mesh with powers that defy providence. Ryoga replies that if he were only the god of time, that would be the case. But as the god of the harvest, the story changes. It is said that constellations forge guardian star contracts with hunters who resonate with their origin in nature, rather than just raw strength. Kronos rules over the harvest and time, and the scythe, the symbol of the harvest, is simultaneously the symbol of the reaper. The harvest and the reaper share the common nature of repelling death and bringing about rebirth. In other words, defying providence itself. Extremely pissed, Kronos asks how he dares try to link his nature to death. He tells this mere human not to be arrogant and makes the whole place shake to scare Ryoga. But our MC warns him this isn't the time to say such things, asking if he really intends to spend the rest of his life without his power and his name. If he's fine with continuing to be weaker than the gods of Olympus, that's alright, but Ryoga came to him believing he would choose revenge, even if he had to change his own nature. He declares that Kronos must recover his power by his side, and together they will take down Olympus. In Ryoga's head, he thinks there's no other choice. If they can't pull this off, there's no hope for him. But to his surprise, Kronos laughs. He admits that, just like the boy said, he hasn't forgotten his revenge for a single moment. So, he'll test if the human can truly bear the weight of that revenge. He notes that turning the god of the harvest into a being that defies providence is indeed very bold, but the boy must understand that reversing one's own nature will come with considerable pain. He wants to know if Ryoga can endure this pain to have him as his very own guardian star. Ryoga, surprised, asks why so suddenly and if they couldn't do this some other time. But without a second thought, Kronos declares that he appoints him as his representative, a saint himself. This leaves our MC in shock, as he knows saints receive holy power as representatives of a constellation. The holy attribute of a saint and necromancy are opposing forces that start clashing inside his body. If he loses consciousness for even a split second, he won't get another chance to obtain a guardian star. What he has to do now is hold on tight, whatever it takes. Some more time passes. At the airport, our boy is back in Japan. He comments that Japan is actually much better, but right beside him is a new character, little Kronos. He asks if the world has really changed this much, noting that the flow of time is something truly grand and cruel. He turns to Ryoga and asks if his contractor doesn't feel the same way. This new form is a new star that emerged in the pantheon, the one who reaps, the so-called giant of the blue sky. Ryoga, staring at little Kronos, thinks he's pretty arrogant for someone who can't even grant a single protection. Even though Kronos has returned to the status of a constellation, he seems quite happy despite having no followers and therefore lacking full constellation power and protection. Even after becoming a constellation again, the life force absorbed through the scythe's common concept only strengthened his body, forcing him into the mold of a reaper. Since he doesn't have a myth and defies providence itself, he needs to build one from here on out to regain his powers. Kronos, knowing what he's thinking, says it's natural to be emotional since he resurrected after a long time. And since he turned him into a saint, Ryoga better start spreading his name everywhere from now on. This makes Ryoga think he's stumbled into an unprecedented situation. He knows that saint is the highest level class in the priest lineage. He thought Kronos would just inject power into him, but he ended up turning a necromancer into a priest, even giving him a new title, the Saint of the White Knight. With this, his efficiency in holy spells increases by 30%, with no class penalties when using necromancer skills. He also acquired an additional trait from the White Knight, allowing him to convert holy power into spiritual power. This way, all equipment and skills from the priest and mage lineages can be used. He also gained an extremely broken skill called Life Drain, which is a holy spell that absorbs the target's life force to be used for physical enhancement or healing. A saint priest relies on holy power, while a necromancer relies on spiritual power. Dealing with two completely distinct powers simultaneously is something he's never heard of in his entire life. He comments to Kronos that being able to use necromancy and holy skills at the same time is definitely way too OP. Kronos, looking quite pleased, says a saint is the representative of his guardian star, so he didn't choose him without thinking. Our MC says he gets it, and that it was all calculated from the start. Kronos confirms it. After all, he was once the king of the gods, so he's very smart. Thinking about other things, our boy remembers that, around this time, the Shinjuku portal should be a good option. The so-called ancient garden is the perfect place to test out his new powers. So the next day, Ryoga and Kronos head towards the portals, which connect to other dimensions. These so-called portals are classified into mobile ones, which disappear after defeating the boss and the core, and fixed ones, which exist for eternity. The ancient garden is a fixed portal. He figures that since this ancient garden has a fixed form, and the entry restriction is only for 1-star hunters, it's an easy place for beginners to enter. From what he can see there, it looks like everyone is busy looking for a party. He remembers he used to do that back in the day too, but in the end, he never formed a decent team. But right then, a group approaches Ryoga, suggesting that if he's alone, why doesn't he join them? However, our MC says he already has company, so he's gonna pass for today. The guy, looking a bit uncomfortable with the rejection, says he understands but whispers to his friends that the MC looks like a total rookie, wondering if he'll really be okay on his own. His friend asks what he's talking about, pointing out that since he refused, they don't need to worry about it. Standing face to face with the portal, Ryoga says that at this level, going solo is more than enough, and now he wants to test out his new skills. And just like that, he finally enters the ancient garden. Walking through it, he notices the place is pretty quiet. But in times like this, the standard trope is that something is bound to show up. And as expected, the first prey has already appeared, a small goblin charging at him from behind, trying to catch him off guard. Instantly, Ryoga dodges the goblin's strike and then grabs the little monster by the neck. He thanks it for coming right to him and offering itself up on a silver platter. He then activates his unique trait, using the White Knight to convert spiritual power into holy power. Following that, he activates the life drain skill and begins draining the life force of that goblin. From what he can feel, using holy power and spiritual power feels pretty similar. But soon he notices something completely different. The goblin's life force is entering his own body. Just like that, the entire life force is absorbed, leaving the goblin completely dried up. Ryoga is quite surprised because, by devouring its life force, he can increase his own base stats. It's seriously OP, because if he defeats them using life drain, his stats go up as well. The level up bonus is 5 points, which means defeating 25 goblins is the equivalent of leveling up. Right behind Ryoga, Kronos appears laughing out loud, asking if his contractor liked that skill. Our MC replies that it's pretty incredible. Highly hyped, Kronos asks Ryoga to praise him, to praise his greatness, as he is the greatest of them all, the king of the gods. But Ryoga cuts his joyride short, saying that alright, now that he finally has a corpse, everything is going to be much easier. He can finally get started, activating the Raise Undead skill. Immediately, the goblin rises from the dead, waiting for Ryoga's orders. Since he created a perfect zombie, all of its stats increase by 97%. This is a 1-star undead zombie. Ryoga, staring at it, thinks that with this it can do the work of a whole person in the ancient garden. And it looks like it's already time to put it to work, as 3 more small goblins show up. Our boy gives the signal, ordering it to go and kill the 3 of them. The small zombie goblin charges at the other 3 goblins, biting one's neck and finishing it off. Another goblin appears behind it, attacking its head. Without a second thought, the zombie goblin bites down on the dead goblin, eating its flesh. Our boy notes that it's a zombie, so it won't die even if its vital spots are hit. Then he grabs another goblin and activates life drain again. Now with only 1 goblin left, that first zombie goblin comes from behind and finishes off the 3rd one. With a corpse right in front of him, Ryoga tries to absorb the life force of the already dead goblin. And it seems it works even on corpses. This proves that life drain has a very broad tolerance. This makes him very confident, knowing he can boost his hunting speed now. He knows there's a saying passed down among necromancers: once you manage to defeat the first 2, the goal is already halfway met. Thus he raises the other 3 goblins, thinking to himself that creating the first undead is the hardest part. But once you get past that point, everything gets easier from then on. Now with 4 perfect zombies with all stats boosted by 97.5%, he says this is exactly what he's talking about. Truly, being a necromancer is the best choice. He watches as his 4 zombie goblins charge into an army of goblins, devouring their own comrades. And even when the goblins land hits on the zombies, obviously since they are zombies, they don't die, because they're basically already dead. So little goblin, you stand no chance and you're already dead too. Watching this, Kronos says that as his contractor, he wishes he had a bit more dignity in combat. But Ryoga tells him to get used to it, because this is how a necromancer fights. After a while of raising the dead, he realizes that the maximum limit of undead he can control has reached the cap, which is 20. Now with 20 zombie goblins, he has an army that can kill countless other goblins. But at that moment in the battle, from another direction, that female hunter from earlier shoots a fire arrow, killing a goblin. Instantly, our boy notices something is wrong and tells them to stop hiding and come out right now. And so the 3 from earlier step out, looking quite nervous as they face Ryoga. One of them asks, almost stuttering, who he is. Seeing Ryoga's reaction, Kronos asks what's wrong. Our boy says he found that face very familiar, but now he remembers, they are the hunters of the Twin Shadows. Kronos asks what he means by Twin Shadows. Our boy confirms it's them, the guys who tried to assassinate him before his regression. He remembers that the so-called twin shadows hunters, Yuma and Yuka Rendo, were famous as twin hunters, and they were a real pain to deal with back in the day. But now, back in the past, Kronos comments that they don't look all that strong, and our boy thinks that's because both are still one-star hunters. Besides, he recalls that back then there weren't 3 of them but only 2. Kronos mentions that taking down future enemies in advance is also an option, but our MC thinks otherwise. The 2 of them only accepted an assassination contract, but they had no direct grudge against him. And so, looking a bit nervous, Yuka asks about these zombies and if he's the one controlling them. Our boy understands their surprise, as the necromancer class would only become widely known a bit later on. So he tells them that yes, these are his summons. At that moment, an idea pops into his head. He wanted someone to carry the luggage, right? So this will definitely help. He knows that the main goal for these guys becoming hunters must be money. Thus he asks if by any chance they want to work with him. Yuka asks what he means by that. Ryoga wants them to be in charge of collecting the magic stones. The split will be 7-2. He defeats the enemies and they make easy money. He asks what they think of the deal. Later they start a little huddle. The girl tells Yuka that they can't accept something like this, and that they can't trust that guy. The blonde guy next to them agrees, saying it's true, veteran. He's never heard of a hunter who summons zombies. Watching this conversation from the corner, our boy notices it's taking way too long. But right then Yuka turns around and says they accept. But in exchange he has to change the split to 5-5, and their share would be just 1.7 for each. But our boy firmly states it will be 7-3, and if they don't accept, the deal is off. Realizing this, Yuma agrees instantly. But in the back, the other boy asks Yuma if he's sure this is okay. Yuma simply asks him not to be scared and to trust him this time, because if Ryoga intended to attack them, they would be dead a long time ago. He points out that the boy entered the portal without any gear and still has absolute confidence in himself. So, if they follow this person, they'll be able to earn way more money than they usually do. A few hours later, the 3 of them mutter to themselves that they can't take it anymore. One of them just asks for a moment to rest. The girl says she's also at her limit. After a long time, they manage to gather a giant pile of magic stones. Yuma thought he wasn't an ordinary person, but now realizes he is much stronger than he imagined. And after he defeats the last goblin, Ryoga says there's another corpse over there that's worth money too. So Yuma walks up to Ryoga and asks if it isn't time to rest a bit, but our MC says no, since there's another dead one right there, and he really doesn't mean to rush them so they can do it at their own pace. This leaves the 3 of them thinking that he is definitely not human. After some time, our boy mentions that it looks like most of the area has been cleared, and now he wants to take a look at his stats. Strength went from 7 to 13, agility went from 6 to 15, vitality went from 7 to 10, durability went from 5 to 6, and holy and spiritual power went from 10 to 11.2. Ryoga notices that in just 3 hours of exploration, his stats went up by 21.2 in total. With this, he already has the specs of a standard level 4 hunter. It seems life drain is way too efficient. He mutters to himself that his level has also gone up, so now he's going to defeat the boss. Later, the 4 of them head towards the boss's room, and sitting on his throne, the goblin boss says that a foolish human has just arrived. Meanwhile, our boy says, "Would you look at that, it's an idiot goblin acting like he's the king of the mountain." But right beside him, Yuka steps up to Ryoga and warns him that the goblin shaman is the boss of the south, so it's best not to provoke him too much. But hearing Ryoga call him an idiot, the goblin boss gets incredibly pissed. He orders his goblins to make this human kneel and bring him before him, their king. Instantly, our boy gives the order for his zombies to devour those goblins right down to the bone. Basically, a very brutal fight breaks out, with goblin killing goblin, eating goblin, hitting goblin, chopping off goblin heads, slicing off goblin arms, a total bloodbath. Noticing that one of his goblins was killed, our boy uses the raise undead skill again, restoring his army to 20 undead goblins. Watching this fierce battle, Yuma wonders what the hell is going on. Even outnumbered, he is turning the corpses into summoned beasts. Up on his throne, the goblin boss stands up immediately and begins his chant, activating the totem of bravery and encouraging his goblins. Because of this, his goblins become much fiercer and stronger. He starts laughing, saying his totem applies a penalty to enemies and a bonus to allies, and they should witness his brave goblins. But our boy just asks what he said, while simply making his goblin break that skull staff. This definitely makes the goblin boss furious, stating that a mere human dared to touch his totem and truly deserves death. Thus, other totems are activated. But once again, his undead goblins smash those totems. Meanwhile, our boy asks if he's really going to let that slide. Staring at the goblin boss trembling with rage, he asks if he's feeling frustrated by any chance. But right then, the goblin summons the incarnation of madness, commanding it to come to him and activating the spell of of madness. At that moment, the three hunters brace themselves against that massive power as the goblin boss's goblins have their strength and agility boosted by 50%. With this, they manage to kill more of Ryoga's undead goblins, dropping his army down to only 8 undead goblins. Our boy comments that, so, that staff is his trump card. The goblin boss, feeling very confident, asks if he saw that. This is the bone staff, forged from the resentment of goblins. But hearing this, Ryoga flashes a little smirk and asks if by any chance that is made of bones. Looks like this is gonna be a piece of cake. So he activates bone control, and the goblin boss's very own staff flies straight towards Ryoga. Basically, the madness spell is interrupted and the boss asks how he did that. Ryoga, with that arrogant little face of his, asks, "What's wrong, goblin boss? Why don't you try using your favorite power again?" Ryoga says that must be because there is grudge imbued in them and the response speed is better than that of ordinary bones. So now he's going to throw it right back at him. He uses his bone control to attack the goblin boss with his own staff. This leaves the little goblin in total shock, and with zero defense, that staff is driven right into his neck, killing the goblin boss instantly. Right away, our boy uses life drain, increasing his stats. He mentions that the potential is considerable, perhaps because he was the boss himself, but then he remembers something, walks over to the goblin boss, grabs a vial, and starts collecting his blood, keeping in mind that he almost drained all the blood away with life drain. After he stores the blood, he says he'll leave the cleanup to them. The three hunters realize that, apparently, they'll have to clean up a lot, since there is an army of goblins. Later, outside the portal, our boy returns looking very confident, while the three are completely exhausted. He turns back to look at them, noticing they have many backpacks, and it looks like they scored a huge haul. At this moment, Ryoga stops and says they did a good job. He asks if they are leaving the magic stones at the Natsuhabara shop, or somewhere like that, but Yuma says no. He says that to sell them for a fair price, it's better they go in person. He adds that if Ryoga wants, he can leave that under his responsibility. But our boy asks why he would trust them, since they just met today. They feel a bit sad about that, given they worked really hard all day. Our MC says he's just kidding. Then he asks how much they think they'll get selling everything. Yuma replies that at the very least about 6 million. And so our boy pulls out his staff. Yuma says he thinks that staff will be pretty cheap. Our boy asks why. He explains it's because of the restrictions and because the options are also kinda bad. Even though spiritual power increases, only priests can equip it, and priests can't manipulate spiritual power. Seeing this, our boy says that's fine then, he can keep it. He asks if that's alright. Yuma, surprised, asks if he really wants that. Our boy says yes, and that they can deduct the staff's value from his share of the total raid earnings. But Yuma says no. For starters, this is an item he earned all by himself, so they'll settle the loot as if the staff doesn't even exist. He asks the others if they agree, and they say yes. Our boy thinks that this side of teamwork is why he likes these guys. So, he says very well then. They will explore together again later. The next day, they enter the ancient garden again. After quite a while hunting, the three are already very tired. Ryoga asks if they can handle more, but Yuma says he doesn't think so, and their backpacks are already pretty full too. Soon our boy tells everyone they can go on ahead. But after they leave, our boy continues his raid with his undead army. Kronos, quite curious, asks why he sent them away on purpose like that. Ryoga asks if it seemed that intentional. The truth is, from now on, he doesn't want others to see. On the north side of the ancient garden, our boy arrives at a certain location. At this spot, he is attacked by several frogmen, but on the spot, he summons his undead, the goblins, who defeat the frogs, but these frogs are warriors much stronger than the goblins themselves. He manages to defeat them. Watching this fight, he recognizes that the frogmen have higher stats than the goblins, so it's normal for that to happen. In this way, he activates bone control and hits a frogman with his staff. But the frogman has a very rare skill, which is the oil shower, because when receiving an attack, it reduces the power of physical piercing damage. With this, it gives a cheeky little smirk at Ryoga, which leaves our MC quite pissed. He charges at the frogman, delivering a heavy kick to its belly, and finally it is killed. In this way, with his bone control and very fast movements, he defeats several other frogmen. He thinks that if he has to move the staff and also create undead, the spiritual power consumption will be too intense. So now what he does is raise the new undead, which are the frogmen, thinking that he still has to support them. And now instead of goblins, he has an army of frogmen. And so, the zombie frogmen defeat the other normal frogmen. Observing this, Ryoga thinks it's great because this way he'll soon manage to return to his current state before his regression. And that damn Magic King should just wait for his moment, because he will definitely crush him in no time. So, after the fight with the frogmen, he arrives at a certain place, running into a certain altar. And there he takes a heart and places it on top of the altar. Kronos asks what he intends to do. Our Proto says he wants to focus now, so he tells him to be quiet. He comments that if he pours the goblin shaman's blood onto the frogman's heart, this is what will happen. At that moment, the frogman's heart begins to resonate with the area. Ryoga says that with this he can access the hidden area, which would only be discovered discovered in a few years. He uncovered the hidden secret of the ancient garden, and now he is moving to the ancient trial field. Soon our boy arrives at an arena together with his army. He remembers that before his regression he couldn't enter because he found it when he was only 1 star, but finally he can see it, and so in front of him, a being is summoned, a gigantic being. Surprised by this, Ryoga realizes it is a new monster, which is basically his trial, where he must face this little guy, a large draconian, which he must defeat in only 10 minutes. So the story goes that Trial Ground of Generations #1 was created by the Dragon Legion at the request of the Pantheon's constellations to handpick elite hunters. For this trial, they stationed an elite soldier straight from the Dragon Legion. Off to the side, Kronos says that with our boy's current power, it doesn't look like he'd last even 10 seconds. And it seems like he's going to have to find another saint, which leaves our boy pretty annoyed, since he doesn't think it's going to go down that way. After all, even though this guy belongs to the dragon race, he must have been weakened to fit a 1-star trial, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Just as the Draconian was about to step forward and attack, our boy asks him to hold on, saying he's about to make a modification and just needs a bit of time, which leaves the Draconian completely thrown off. Right after, Ryoga points out that normally, the villain waits for the protagonist to finish transforming without even hesitating. Then, once the transformation is done, modifying his Toadman zombies, he's ready to attack. Kronos comments that the modification looked pretty improvised, but Ryoga shoots back that he used to be a 9-star necromancer before his regression. And now, that's enough talk. The Draconian can come at him. Without a second thought, the Draconian charges at Ryoga, looking to end things with a single strike. But the moment he gets close, a swarm of Toadmen jump on him, biting into every part of his body. Furious, the Draconian starts punching them, trying to rip them off himself. What he doesn't realize, though, is that their bodies are crawling with a level 12 toxic acid. Watching the scene unfold, Ryoga realizes he'd converted all of the Toadmen's strength stats, which had doubled when they turned into zombies, into poison instead, so their strength and agility dropped, but the poison itself became way more potent. Even so, after taking them down, the Draconian goes after the protagonist next. Ryoga, without so much as flinching, says the guy's pretty tough for shrugging off that poison. Then he activates the defense on his grudge staff, and a barrier of energy shields him from the hit. Still, he's a little on edge, knowing that even with the Draconian's strength cut in half by the poison, he's still plenty strong. Sure enough, the Draconian shatters the barrier and lunges at Ryoga. But at the last second, Ryoga uses his bone control to hurl his skull staff straight at him, landing a direct hit on the Draconian's left hand and making him howl in pain. Seizing the opening, Ryoga sends his Toadmen swarming back in. Second by second, the Draconian gets weaker and weaker until he just can't take it anymore, forced to tear the toads off his own body and start punching them all over again. Ryoga figures that, for a last stand, it really wasn't bad at all. But unfortunately for the Draconian, this is the end. He drops to his knees. Ryoga picks his bone staff back up and walks toward him, calm as ever. Then he activates Life Drain, pulling every last drop of vital energy out of the Draconian. And that's how the Necromancer clears Ancient Trial Ground #1. Off to the side, Kronos remarks that taking down the dragon race with a horde of half-rate undead is honestly pretty impressive. With that, the mark of perseverance gets etched in. It lets him cut the delay before taking damage by 40% and boosts his mana regen speed by 20%. He admits the skill itself isn't bad at all, but the real prize here is something else entirely, since a dragon corpse is the best possible material for a high-tier undead. Curious, little Kronos asks what he's planning to do with the body. Ryoga says he's going to turn it into an undead stronger than the original, so the materials don't go to waste. But then it hits him. For that, he's going to need alchemy tools. And as far as he remembers, around this time, a certain alchemist should already have his workshop up and running. So the next day, he heads over to the Kishu region, eventually reaching an abandoned warehouse. Once there, he notes that by the looks of it, nothing's changed. But just as he's knocking on the door, a massive explosion goes off, and he comments that apparently that part hasn't changed either. Out through the gate walks the alchemist himself, and our boy recognizes him instantly, the man who developed the formula for the world's first mass-produced intermediate potion, famous as Japan's #1 alchemist, the great alchemist Renya Shinya. He walks up to Renya and introduces himself as Ryoga Chinen, explaining that he came hoping Renya might let him use his alchemy tools, which leaves the guy completely caught off guard. Our boy just asks him not to make that face, like he's hating the idea. But Ryoga clarifies that he's not just looking to borrow them. This would be a win-win since he knows Renya's been working on a compound formula to mass produce it. That catches Renya even more off guard, and he asks how Ryoga even knows that. Ryoga just walks right past him through the door, saying he's going to help him out, leaving the alchemist completely lost. A few hours later, the formula's ready. Renya, absolutely thrilled, says he managed to stabilize a potion that had been so unstable it looked like it could blow up at any second, and asks, curious, how Ryoga pulled that off. Ryoga thinks to himself that of course Renya wouldn't get it yet. After all, this was something he himself had invented, and Renya wouldn't figure it out until years down the line. Still, seeing how curious he is, Ryoga asks if he wants to test it out. Without missing a a beat, our boy slices his own arm open with a scalpel, then pours the potion over the cut. A few seconds later, the arm's completely healed, like nothing ever happened, which leaves Renya overjoyed, saying he actually pulled it off, and that this is incredible. But just as Renya reaches for the potion, our boy takes it right back, asking if he's curious about the formula. Renya says of course he is, no question about it. So Ryoga tells him he could use a hand with something, and maybe in return he'll hand over that formula. But if he tells Renya, who seems to have gotten interested in this, he'll come just to borrow the alchemy tools. But he's going to change the conditions. How about they work together? And he will teach him the potion recipe and various other things. In exchange, the royalties will be a 6-4 split. And of course, the 4 will be for him. In our MC's head, he knows he's already caught in his web. So now all that's left is to wait for his answer. Because from now on, he will be his servant, or rather, he will be his partner. Later on, Ryoga takes the Draconian's body out of his ring. Renya asks what that is. The Prota says that as a necromancer, he is going to process this special corpse. And he asks if by any chance he's curious, instead of just peeking from the corner, he could come and help. But Renya asks why he would do that. They aren't even under any contract yet, and the only thing he is doing is lending his space and nothing more. Our boy just says yeah, sure, whatever you say. Right beside him, Kronos says this guy is pretty cautious, and it makes him want to tell him to just be a man and make a decision already. Ryoga says that, well, considering what he went through, it's actually understandable, because as a researcher for Daisei, the biggest company in the country, he achieved many results, but they were all stolen by his superior, and after that he was forced to resign, so it's only natural for him to distrust people. Kronos says that the human world really is made of nothing but betrayals and obsessions, but Ryoga replies that the gods are exactly the same way. Soon he turns to Renya and says that since he doesn't know his skills, he must be hesitating about whether or not to speed up the contract. So to confirm this, Ryoga is going to give him a little hand. Renya says yeah, alright, he will help him out then. Soon our boy tells him that he first needs to have 5 F-rank magic stones, at a ratio of 42%. And just like that, it's done. Our Prota, seeing his speed, realizes that this partnership is definitely going to be much more efficient. So, using the titanium liquid he created as a catalyst, he starts engraving the formulas onto the bones and imbuing curses to boost an undead's performance. He knows it's necessary to overlap the formulas and curses in multiple layers, repeating it over and over again. Finally, he finishes his work. He mutters to himself that he finished faster than he imagined. Meanwhile, Renya, standing in the back, mentions that it's been 3 straight days, but he starts staring at Ryoga and wonders who this guy really is, because even being just a 1-star hunter, he can move a corpse's heart using magic power, and he does things that defy common sense. But from what he can see, his skill is the real deal. So he says it will be a 6-4 split after all, and he accepts his initial proposal. Our boy asks if he's sure about that. Renya says that on his own it would take him about 2 years to complete the intermediate healing potion. But with him, the story changes. And if this advances his research, he will collaborate. So Ryoga says that from now on, he's counting on him as his exclusive alchemist. But now he figures all that's left is to find the soul that will serve as the core for the Eldritch Dragon. And for that, he already has the perfect spot. Thus, he calls his new friends and asks if they are up for one more job. So, near the border, the rookies finally show up in front of Ryoga, striking this really weird pose. But obviously, our MC doesn't care about them and just tells them to follow him. Curious, Yuma asks why they came to a dangerous place like this. Because ever since the North Portal broke, there must be monsters around here. Ryoga says it's because he wanted to pay his respects to an old acquaintance of his after so much time. And he walks through the forest wondering if it's this way. But finally, after a while, he stops, coming face to face with a 2-star orc. This really surprises the 3 of them, who, very scared, want to retreat. But our boy realizes that apparently they still don't believe in his skills. So he figures that this time, he'll have to test the performance of the processed bones. Thus, he uses a ghoul bone and activates bone control, immediately attacking that orc. But the orc is also a very good fighter and throws his weapon to break that bone. But our boy just says, so it came this way, but it's a shame for you that I can change its direction however I want. And he simply deflects his bone, which right after strikes dead center into the orc's chest, making it scream in pain. Ryoga says he meant to hit the heart, but it looks like he tanked it pretty well. Extremely pissed off, the orc pulls the bone out of his shoulder and then charges at Ryoga with pure hatred. But when it finally got close to him, Yuma stepped forward, blocking the strike. While our boy mentions that he had perfect timing, he tells the orc that if it were just 1, fine. But what about 3? He wants to know if it can block them all. And just like that, 3 large bones pierce right through the orc's heart, making it drop dead to the ground. Watching this, Yuma says he defeated a 2-star orc like it was nothing. But our boy tells them to stay right where they are, because the fun is just getting started. But Yuma, looking nervous, asks didn't he say he was coming to pay his respects to an acquaintance, and asks if he's sure it's this way. Our boy says yeah, it's definitely this way, because that person is in the orc village. And so, back to Ryoga, he tells them they can use this time to make more money, so it's a win-win for both of them. He asks if they don't agree, which leaves the three of them feeling pretty embarrassed. So, later on, he defeats a few more orcs and creates a small army out of them. But the system informs him that the stat absorption limit for a single race has been reached, and it's no longer possible to absorb from this same race. So, our boy figures it would be weird if it were infinite, thus telling the others they're wrapping up the hunt for today. Then he asks them to set up camp, and as soon as he turns around, he notices that the camp and the food have already been ready for a while. He says they were truly on standby, and our boy notes that his stats have gone up considerably, and tomorrow they will head to the village. The three of them say they understand, and now they're going to rest, counting on the orcs to keep watch during the night, and the three very hyped zombie orcs seem to agree. But while the three are sleeping, our boy stares at the moon and realizes his level went up again, and now he thinks he can read the knowledge that was unlocked. Thus, he accesses the Library of Knowledge, where he can view the knowledge left behind by the ancient Lord of Death. This place is basically a library, and he grabs one of the books, realizing it's exactly as he expected. He can't read the contents due to the system's level restriction. There are tons and tons of books he can't read, leaving him pretty disappointed, because he, who once reached 9 stars, is now reading a 1-star beginner's guide book. But even so, there's nothing he can do. He's going to have to read it. So he sits down and starts reading the book calmly, and after a while, he acquires a new skill. At dawn, that sleeping little guy notices a shadow over his face. When he finally opens his eyes, there is a monstrous orc wearing bone armor right in front of him, making him scream in terror instantly, while our boy points out that they get scared way too easily, considering they see this every single day. But Yuma says it looks very different from yesterday. Our boy tells them that yeah, he made some modifications. Now he has a small army of orcs, armed with bone and iron armor. They are called armored zombies, level 2 undead class, and now he tells them it's time to head to the orc village. By the end of the day, they finally reach the village. At that very moment, the gatekeeper orcs notice their presence. Meanwhile, our boy activates bone control, attacking those orcs in the front, telling them not to make such a big fuss, because he's going to kill every single one of them anyway. But right then, another orc, much larger than them and wielding a giant axe, orders his army to attack those humans. At that moment, a rain of arrows rains down on them, but Yuma blocks the arrows with his shield, and then Yuka starts gunning down those orcs with her fire crossbow. Watching this, Kronos remarks that they are quite useful, and our boy agrees, adding that these guys are going to grow even more from here on out. That being the case, Ryoga orders his army to attack, and so the armored zombie orcs charge forward to defeat the living orcs. With one powerful punch, one of them knocks down 3 enemies. Seeing this, Ryoga comments that they are exceeding his expectations. And apparently, reading that book in the library paid off, because now the enemies are completely terrified. But unfortunately for them, this is only the beginning. And right then, Ryoga's army charges at the remaining orcs, and thus a war between normal orcs and zombie orcs breaks out. But in the midst of the attacks, the system reports that the zombies' armor has been damaged, and its durability has dropped by 15%. But soon our boy buffs them with bone armor, increasing durability by 20%, on top of repairing it. So with this, it becomes much easier for the zombie orcs to kill the others. Shortly after, he activates another skill called flesh agitation, where the flesh of the corpses on the ground turns into arrows that strike the orcs. Watching this, Yuma realizes he is using pieces of zombie flesh to paralyze the orcs' movements. This man isn't just strong, the way he uses his skills is truly exceptional. Then, after a massive slaughter, the orc boss is the only one left. And at that moment, he begins his own modification, growing much larger and entering his berserker mode. But our MC just lets out a mocking scoff, because he finally showed up and he was tired of waiting so long. And with a lot of hatred in his little heart, the orc charges at Ryoga, but when the axe was close to our boy, he activates bone control, and 5 bone arrows launch at the orc boss, hitting several of his vital spots. In immense pain, the orc falls to the ground and starts muttering something about wanting to pull the bones out. But our MC simply raises his hand and tells him no, he can't do that. Thus, he increases the spiritual power infused within his own bones, saying that either way, he isn't the only one who's going to die. So, he doesn't need to be so pessimistic. However, he acknowledges that manipulating 6 bones simultaneously consumes a lot of spiritual power. But if even one of the embedded bones is removed, the boss will move again. So only one thing is left for him to do: pierce his heart with a single decisive strike. Thus, he activates bone control once more, with a few more bones piercing his heart. And finally, the orc boss is killed, and our boy, quite exhausted, walks over to him, activates life drain, and after a few seconds, he manages to recover 100%. With him much more hyped and recovered, the other orcs show up, but seeing that he is unharmed, they fearfully start start to run away. But our boy glares at them and asks if they really think he is going to let them escape. Then, he activates flesh agitation once again, and that zombie flesh begins to paralyze the orcs, causing every single one of them to drop to the ground. And so he brings in his army of armored zombies to finish off the remaining orcs. And just like that, the orcs are killed. By late afternoon, those three guys, seeing the amount of magic crystals, wonder how much all of this is worth. But Ryoga tells them that the main prize isn't these crystals, but rather this right here, the blood axe, a rare class item, an axe made through blood smelting, imbued with sorcery that increases the user's strength. The more blood the axe absorbs, the greater its power becomes. He comments to everyone that conquering the orc village was totally worth it because of this. Thus, he hands the axe to Yuma, telling him to take very good care of it. He also says he'll leave the loot gathering to them. The three of them agree, saying they will collect the magic stones, and they ask him to rest a bit. Our boy says alright, he's counting on them. While the three collect the crystals, our boy walks toward a certain tree, saying he finally found it. So he steps up to the base of the tree and orders him to come out so they can talk for a bit. But apparently there is no reaction, and our MC just sighs. Then he picks up a bone and says that if that's how he wants it, he'll make him appear. And he simply starts knocking on the tree. Right after he knocks on it, a gigantic shadow wraps around it. Meanwhile, our boy mentions that whether it's a constellation like Kronos or a ghost, it seems he has to be firm with them. At that moment, a shadow appears from behind the tree asking who he is. Our boy says he's glad to see him, the magic warrior, known as Sora Kashiwagi. Curious, the shadow asks how he knows his name. Our boy replies how could he not know since he is the hero who stopped the monster wave heading south 35 years ago on the front lines. But only he knows that he turned him into an undead and they fought together before his regression, so it's impossible to forget. And thanks to warriors like him, he says Japan wasn't destroyed and there's still a monument standing so that day won't be forgotten. He knows he was a prodigy who became famous on the front lines at the start of the Great Change. Sora Kashiwagi gained fame with his unique magic warrior skill, possessing both fighter and mage talents simultaneously. Feeling quite proud, that Shadow says his death wasn't in vain then. But our boy tells him that of course not everyone had their names etched in history. Furious at this, Sora asks what he means. Our boy asks if he remembers the name Naruhito Hakugo, the sub-master of the Aragiri Guild. And obviously Sora remembers that very well. Back then he requested backup from the guild, stating there were civilians left in the southern agricultural zone. He pleaded with Hakugo because on the front lines, his friends couldn't hold out much longer and needed support as quickly as possible. But that guy Hakugo said backup was impossible and they couldn't send reinforcements. At that moment, Sora understood the reality and asked if he really intended to use them as meat shields from the very beginning, lied about the south being safe, sent them there, while they safely escaped through the north gate. He asked if that wasn't exactly what happened. Basically, Hakugo just started laughing and said that thanks to him they bought enough time to reorganize the main unit and leave through the north gate without any issues. Sora asked if he truly sent them knowing there were civilians and counting on the fact they wouldn't abandon them. But Hakugo told him not to be so pessimistic, because with this Aragiri would become the hero that stopped the wave, and naturally the honor belongs to them, the survivors. And if you survive, you're a hero, but if you die, that's the end of it. Even though Sora had a lot of hatred, there wasn't much he could do because at that moment a monster attacked a civilian. Using only his bare fists, he defeated that orc. Thus he called his men to protect the civilians and get out of there. The guys asked what he was going to do, but without a second thought he said, hurry, that's an order, they must evacuate the civilians now. So back in the present, he is now just a ghost, listening to Ryoga say that the white dragon who sent him to his death became a hero, and all records related to Sora were erased. And honestly, that's really sad. He was the one who died, but the glory went to the other guy, and you really can't even rest in peace these days. If it were him, he would definitely come back from the dead to get revenge. But hearing this, Sora tells him to cut the crap and get straight to the point. Then our boy tells him he will help him with his revenge. In exchange, he will forge a contract with him, making him his undead. And he says he also prepared a vessel for his soul showing the Draconian's corpse. Thus, Sora begins to stare at that Draconian, and says that in this state he didn't even consider revenge. But now he has one single condition. Ryoga can use him however he wants, but he absolutely refuses to do any act that harms the innocent. Then our boy thinks about how he imposed that exact same condition before his regression. And that soft heart of his hasn't changed one bit. So he says that's just as expected from a hero. And he accepts, promising he will do just that. Soon Sora says that well, alright then. He will become his undead. In this way, our boy obtained the earthbound spirit Sora Kashiwagi. He knows that, before his regression, he made Kashiwagi possess a skeleton knight and made him reach the unprecedented level of a hell knight. Even so, he sometimes wondered what would happen if he had given Sora a stronger body from the very beginning. Watching this from the corner, Kronos says he is a masterpiece, and asks if he strengthened the corpse, anticipating it up to this point. Our boy admits that was exactly it, and this Sora Kashiwagi is an incomplete eldritch dragon, a 3-star class, boss, with several highly OP skills and attributes. Our MC, looking at his status window, realizes it's perfect. And this is a trait he didn't have when he possessed the Skeleton Knight, which is the inherent trait Magic Warrior, where he has the aptitude of both a fighter and a mage. As the stats increase, his spiritual power goes up, and when it goes up, one of the stats is randomly boosted. Thus, our boy realizes that this Magic Warrior trait was inherited. He asks how he feels in that body. Sora says it's not bad at all, although it is inferior to when he was alive. In Roga's mind, he knows it's still incomplete, because he used the curse formula just to mimic the concept of an eldritch dragon. But it is a much better start than before, and for now, it is enough. And so, he calls Sora to come along with him, calling him his subordinate, which directly clashes with the so-called hero, who just stands there looking quite sulky. Ryoga, confused, asks what's wrong. Sora asks, "What do you mean subordinate?" and says he doesn't think that sounds very good. Our boy asks if he wants him to call him by his real name, but he says he left that name behind. Then, the MC says he is a pretty complicated guy, remembering that in the past he was much quieter than now and maybe his personality has changed. Sora says a name that intimidates the opponent just by hearing it would be nice, but he can't think of a good one. Our Prota asks, how about Fafnir? It's the dragon that appears in Norse mythology, but he says that's not catchy. And what about Black Dragon? But he says that's way too cliche. How about Tiamat? He says that's also overkill. Thus our boy asks, how about he just calls him Great Serpent then? Which makes Sora very upset, saying that name was rejected. But after that he says alright, he'll go with the first name, this Fafnir thing. The Prota says he gets it, Fafnir, so let's go. But Sora, looking very flustered, asks him to wait, because he is basically naked right now. He turns around, spots an orc hut, goes over there, grabs some fabric and ties it around his waist, basically making a pair of shorts. Watching this, Ryoga wonders to himself if he always had this kind of personality, because this guy is seriously weird. Now outside the portal, our boy goes to the alchemist, making him very happy, because what he is seeing right now is a corpse that was soaked in the solution, completely moving around. Our boy tells him that he managed to get a soul that matches the body down at the border, which gets Renya really hyped, saying that he is incredible and that he definitely wants to research this. But Fafnir says he is super gross and asks if he can punch him, but the Prota says no, he can't do that because he is his partner. At that moment, Yuma's group also arrives, saying they are going to return to Tokyo for a bit to organize their items. Our boy says he understands. Right after they leave, he summons the orc boss's body. They ask what he should create out of the orc leader's corpse. Curious, Renya asks what comes next. The Prota asks if he's really that curious, and Renya says no, absolutely not. And that last time he thought his arm was going to fall off from mixing herbs so much, but now he is right back at it mixing herbs again, while thinking to himself that he just can't contain his curiosity. Either way, this man always exceeds his imagination, and there's no way not to be curious. On Ryoga's side, he starts with the flesh separation, removing all the meat from the orc, leaving only the skeleton. Watching this, Kronos asks if he wants to create an undead, while Ryoga thinks that the more firepower, the better. He begins to infuse curses and the skeleton enhancement. At this moment, his skeleton is in a state of perfection, and all of its attributes have increased by 100%. Thus, he asks Renya for the extract and begins to infuse it into the skeleton's bone. The system informs him that due to the stability and quality, the creation of the skeleton is affected, and the skeleton's trait has been specialized in defense. Our boy says, very hyped, that with this it will be able to serve as a bodyguard. And so he created a skeleton guard, undead race, and a 2-star class. He tells the skeleton guard that from now on, whenever he uses life drain, it must protect him well. Obviously getting no response, he says alright then, he can go now. But curious, Renya asks why he created a skeleton warrior right now. Our boy explains that bones have great advantages. Besides being lightweight, they don't rot even without prior treatment. And unlike zombies, which have a time limit, as long as he supplies spiritual power, he can use them freely however he wants. And since life drain is a short-range skill, he needed an escort at the moment of activation. And so Renya thinks that he didn't just turn him into a skeleton, but even thought about the maintenance, and that's why his interest in him never ends. Afterwards, he tells Shintani that he is heading out to take care of some business, so he asks him to watch over things. But surprised, the alchemist asks where he is going at a time like this. He says he is going to the Pantheon, because he received a notice saying that since he leveled up, he must receive a holy spell, which leaves Renya completely lost. But shortly after, he is totally shocked, telling him to wait for a second. What do you mean holy spell? Does this really mean that he is in fact a priest? Our boy tells him he's a very devout believer, you know. But Renya says no, that's absolutely impossible. That wouldn't be possible even if the world turned upside down. But our MC changes the subject and asks if he has already registered the patent for the intermediate healing potion. Renya says yes, of course, and the review should start soon. Our boy comments that he acts pretty fast. Renya explains that as time goes by, the competition only increases, so he isn't the type of person to leave things for later. The problem is the marketing, since the official exhibition will only happen next year. Seeing this, the Prota just tells him to give him a few potions, because if there is a chance, he'll promote it for him. Renya says he would really appreciate that. Ryoga mentions that if this works out, a lot, and he means a lot of money will come rolling in. And at the end of the day, money is the best thing in this world. Looking at this scene, Renya wonders if he really is a priest, because he sure doesn't look like one. Now the scene cuts to the so-called pantheon, which suddenly appeared after the Great Change. Most of those who visit are gathered to receive holy spells and blessings from the constellations. Some constellations are very worldly, requiring offerings from the faithful. Kronos, approaching the pantheon, mentions that he doesn't see any holy relics exuding divinity. Our boy explains that no one would leave something so valuable just lying on the ground. Basically, what he has to do is climb stairs and lots of stairs, because unfortunately this place has no elevator. Kronos asks if he really means he has to make all this effort to meet a great god or something. The so-called path to divinity has 108 steps. Ryoga asks Kronos how much further they have to go. He replies that they are very close, the same amount they already climbed, and they will arrive. Our MC says that means they are exactly halfway there. He comments that if he has to climb all of this just to get absolutely nothing useful, there will be hell to pay. Finally, after a long time, he climbs it all. At the top, he finds himself in a very different place, the so-called pantheon. At that moment, the system announces that the constellation He Who Is Wealthy shows aversion. The constellation He Who Covers Death is suspicious. And the constellation Lord of Abydos shows discomfort. Watching this, Kronos says it is truly a masterpiece. Ryoga just tells him to shut up for a second. Finally, Kronos transforms and says that now it's his turn. At that moment, he faces the pantheons and kind of clicks on a star. The system informs that the constellation Giant of the Blue Sky has been registered in the pantheon. Because of this, he obtained the holy spells, Impure Blessing and Wedge of Retaliation. The Impure Blessing accumulates negative energy to increase the target's stats. As for the Wedge of Retaliation, it works like this. For every damage received from the opponent, a retaliation stack is obtained. It deals instant damage with the power increased according to the number of accumulated retaliations, and the caster's stats increase temporarily. Very hyped, Kronos asks if he's seeing this because that's what he granted him. The Prota says it's not bad at all. Kronos, feeling confident, laughs out loud, saying this is his greatness. But soon the system states that the giant who opposes the sky does not possess enough divinity as a constellation. To continue shining in the pantheon, he must obtain more feats and acclaim. The star's light is too weak to generate devotees, and he must increase his divinity little by little. The Prota says that's what the rules say, which leaves Kronos quite discouraged, complaining that this system is total trash. In the end, our boy thinks that even so, he is quite happy because the fact that he got stronger doesn't change. Shortly after he returns from the pantheon, he starts walking through the neighborhood. But out of nowhere, a big guy stops him. He says, well, why the hell is he leaving the pantheon? And comments it's been a long time, Ryoga. This guy in front of him is Satake Shigeru. But our boy really didn't recognize him at first and asks who he is. The guy, pissed off, says they are buddies from the orphanage and asks if he doesn't remember it's him, Satake. Ryoga starts thinking and, after a while, finally recognizes the guy. It's that piece of trash who was always extorting him. And from what he remembers, they aren't friends, so he doesn't need to waste time talking to him. He remembers perfectly well that back in the orphanage days, this guy would get mad over anything, pick fights with others, and also extort them. Since he obviously didn't like this guy, he beat him up back then, breaking his nose. So Ryoga hits right where it hurts, asking if by any chance his nose has already healed, which makes the guy extremely pissed, calling him a bastard. But right after, Satake calms down, saying he can't lose his temper, and asks if he happens to recognize what he's wearing. He points out that the emblem is from the Aragiri Guild. He says that if Ryoga is going to the pantheon, he must be a fifth-rate hunter, and he shouldn't think things will be like before. But our boy replies that, to him, it seems like nothing has changed. This makes the guy even more furious, getting ready to punch him and telling him not to even think about pushing his luck. But before he could attack him, his superior stops the strike, warning that they are in the middle of the city and he can't do that there. Satake calls the superior Jomon, and says that the boy was the one who started it. The captain glares at Ryoga and suggests they change locations for an official match. He thinks to himself that the boy came looking for a fight knowing they are from Aragiri, and that this brat is truly arrogant. Satake asks what he means by an official fight against this guy. The captain replies that they are all acquaintances, aren't they? So why don't they settle this with fists instead of just talking? Which gets Satake pretty hyped. He plays it off saying no, he was just kidding, because a guy like Ryoga must have become a hunter very recently, so it would be too disadvantageous for him. But instantly, our boy says he accepts, which surprises Satake. The Prota, confident, asks what the problem is and if by any chance he is scared. This leaves the guy grinding his teeth in anger, wanting to beat him up right there, and saying a word given is a sacred word, you brat. Later in the gym belonging to the Aragiri guild. In the official battle, our boy announces he is a priest, so he must fight using his representative. Satake notices he got a pretty interesting skill, and apparently it's a summon beast, but concludes it won't do him any good anyway. At that moment, the system is activated, starting the measurement of the hunter's defense and HP inside the area. And if there is a life-threatening risk, a barrier will be activated automatically. And now, the system starts the match. And very confident, Satake asks what's wrong, and if by any chance he's so scared he's going to pee his pants. But our boy wonders why this guy talks so much. At that moment, Fafnir says he didn't expect to run into Aragiri like this. And now he's going to take the opportunity to test the conditions of this new body. And since the opponent is from Aragiri, he doesn't need to hold back. But our boy tells him to finish him off in one strike because there's something he wants to test. And Fafnir replies that going easy is actually going to be the hardest part. Really pissed off by this conversation, Satake charges at Fafnir, telling him to die, because he's going to make it clear who's the boss around here. When his spear gets close to Fafnir, the Draconian easily jumps and dodges the strike. But when he counterattacks, Satake uses instant reflex movement, dodging the blow. And right after, he appears underneath, using the Kairagi spear style 2 single point rupture. Watching this, the captain notices his reaction time is better than in training, and he thinks this will be over in the blink of an eye. But to both of their surprise, Fafnir just went ahead, blocked his spear, and grabbed it. Extremely shocked, the kid asks how he did that, and he realizes he can't move his spear at all, but the Draconian says it's truly pathetic because Satake acts without even thinking about his next move. If this were a real battle, he would be completely dead by now. But right before attacking, Fafnir remembers he has to take it easy, so he just gives him a little tap on the shoulder, which basically dislocates his shoulder right out of its socket, making Satake scream in pain. Watching him lying on the ground, our boy says that last time he broke his nose because he screamed too much, but now he only let out a momentary scream, so apparently he's grown a lot. Furious, Satake calls him a little bastard. At that moment, Fafnir takes a step forward, while Satake charges at him with his spear, wanting to kill them both. But unfortunately for him, Fafnir goes ahead and shatters the ground, basically screwing up Satake's movement and causing him to lose his balance. While Fafnir, with that cheeky smirk on his face, says that if you use the same technique twice, the opponent will definitely notice. And in the end, the pathetic one here is him. So he's just going to give him a little kick to his leg, completely shattering the hunter's leg. And right after, he says he's done for, getting ready to finish him off. When the kid starts crying out of fear, Captain Joman stops the fight, looking really pissed, telling him to wait, and our boy notices he stepped in to interrupt way faster than he expected. But now the match has been ended, and the captain tells him to wait a bit because he's going to call a priest right now. But our boy says there's already one right there, so they don't need another one. But the captain asks if he doesn't know that a one-star heal can't fix fractures. But the prota says he has at least that level of common sense, so the captain asks how he intends to heal him, and our boy says he's going to use an intermediate potion. But the blonde guy says an intermediate potion costs basically 1 million each. Besides, his leg was broken by his own summoned beast. But Ryoga asks if he hasn't heard the news that the mass production of intermediate potions was a success, and he says that of course he doesn't know anything about that, but he doesn't want to accept charity from the winner, telling him to leave. But our boy says he's offering it because he wants to help him, so he should just accept it already. But in his head he knows he's not actually that benevolent, because he was really wondering how to advertise it, and he didn't think he would find the perfect guinea pig in a place like this. He simply uses the potion on the fractured leg, and after a few seconds the magic happens, and the captain is extremely surprised noticing it was completely healed with the intermediate potion. He soon realizes that this potion is indeed very good, and he needs to get some for himself too. But he asks, very seriously, where he bought the mass-produced version of an intermediate potion, and deep down our boy is very happy because he finally took the bait. And he comments that Jomon is the captain of Aragiri and must be a 3-star hunter, and the guy says yes, he is, but what about it? And Ryoga says that well then, he should accept his challenge, and if he does, he'll tell him where to get the potion. And the guy asks if he really thinks the previous match wasn't enough. But well, if he's going to tell him regardless of the outcome, then alright, and our boy says yes, of course. And the match from earlier was way too short, so this time he wants to fight for real. And just like that, another match begins, and the captain charges straight at Fafnir with the Zephyr sword style, the 5th form, forcing Fafnir into his defensive mode, and the captain thinks he's indeed impressive, since he repelled Satake's thrust. But even so, his giant body has its limits. And because of the continuous damage, his defense efficiency has dropped. So the captain takes this opportunity and charges with everything he's got at Fafnir. And in the back, our boy watches, thinking it was just as he suspected. Kashiwagi's combat style relies on speed, and it doesn't match the physique of a Draconian, which is basically a fighter. And well, that's the reason he provoked Jomon, using the potion as bait. Because if he encounters an enemy he can't fight well against, Fafnir will also feel the difference and evolve. And this dragon, in the middle of the fight, says that in this combat he'll get used to this heavy body, while our boy notes that he has a beautiful stance, as expected from his right-hand man. But then he also can't just stand around watching. Thus, he activates the Impure Blessing, using it to buff Fafnir. After he activates this skill, he thinks it's a holy spell buff, but this buff is incredibly strong, which is definitely an insane skill. So now the next step is to cast a debuff on the opponent. Thus, the captain notices that he is getting slower. Apparently, he buffs allies and debuffs enemies. He is truly surprised, wondering if this guy is really just a one-star hunter. In the back, Kronos asks how he likes the new power he gave him. Our boy says it's not bad for a lower rank constellation. Pissed off, Kronos asks how he dares call him lower rank like that. But our boy cuts him off instantly, saying they are in the middle of a battlefield, so he tells him to be quiet, because now it's really about to start. He casts another blessing on Fafnir, the so-called Wedge of Retaliation. Then, he orders Fafnir to go crazy. Fafnir, pumped up, says now we're talking, this is the best kind of order. Without a second thought, he charges at the captain. Meanwhile, the captain thinks that as a 3-star from the Aragiri Guild, adapting to a stat drop is child's play. But how is a 1-star summon tanking 3-star attacks and still charging forward like that? But in Fafnir's head, he realizes he has to forget his speed-focused combat style from when he was still human, because this body is an undead, and taking damage won't hinder his movements. Therefore, he shouldn't dodge the attacks but rather absorb them and return them in close combat. So, with a powerful punch, he strikes the captain, who tries to block it right away. But soon another punch comes from above, sending the captain flying. He thinks, damn, that took a huge chunk of my HP, and there's no way this is a 1-star summon. Really pissed, he realizes that if he takes another hit like that, he will end up losing the fight, which would be shocking. And no freaking way he cannot lose. As a 3-star guy in the Aragiri Guild, he can't lose to some random 1-star guy. Now he has to take advantage of the fact that he still has the upper hand in speed. He thinks summoners usually have low physical stats. If he can get closer to him, bypassing Fafnir and coming face to face with the boy, he can win. He uses his sword style, the 12th form, Piercing Strike, but at the last second when the attack was about to hit him, our boy says he figured he would try that. So, with a simple snap of his fingers, he releases the Wedge of Retaliation, basically causing the captain's body to suffer a rebound effect from the shockwave generated by the release. Jomun's HP dropped to 0, and the match ended just like that. Now it's night at the office of the Aragiri Guild's number 2. He is speaking directly with the 7-star hunter Naruhito Hakugo, Fafnir's so-called nemesis. In front of him is Captain Jomun, with a nasty black eye, telling him that this is the truth. Hakugo asks if he verified the potion's effectiveness. Jomun says yes, that they heal bone fractures in an instant and have the same efficacy as the mid-rank potions they use in portals. With his head bowed, he apologizes to the Vice Master, saying he is truly sorry and that he takes full responsibility for dragging Aragiri's name through the mud. But Hakugo asks why Captain Jomun's defeat would tarnish Aragiri's reputation. When the captain starts to explain, the Vice Master asks if he really thought Aragiri's name would be stained just because an eternal 3-star lost to some random guy. Seeing the Vice Master so pissed about it, and clearly very disappointed and disdainful, the captain just apologizes, saying he got too carried away and hid behind Aragiri's name. The Vice Master says that's enough, and that he is dismissed now. Right after he leaves, the Vice Master talks to his assistant, ordering her to demote him to a regular member and to also look for the source of these mid-rank potions. She says she understands. Furthermore, checking the cameras, he acknowledges that it's impossible for a 1-star hunter's summon to defeat a 3-star. From what he heard, he was supposed to be a priest who somehow managed to summon a divine beast. He asks if his name is Ryoga Chinen and orders her to investigate him as well. She replies yes, she will do it right away. The scene shifts back to the Prota, thinking that by now the news about the potion must have reached the Aragiri higher-ups, and he is really anxious to see their reaction. But in front of Ryoga, Fafnir calls him. The Prota asks what's wrong, and the Draconian asks why he has to read a book about spear skills. Our boy explains that since he is a magic fighter, he is good at close combat and weapons, so he figured it would be better if he learned it first. Fafnir complains that it sucks, and asks why spear fencing all of a sudden. Our boy explains that if things get worse, everyone will attack him, so now is the time to train, because that really annoys him. Hearing this, Fafnir starts laughing out loud, saying it's only natural for the master to be the weakest. He teases him, saying a master who looks weaker than his right-hand man should drink a lot more protein and train hard to reach his level. But little does Fafnir know that our boy has 100% control over him. Fafnir notices his left hand moving on its own, and right after, he punches himself hard in the face, and he says all right, he gets it now and he can finally teach him spear skills. The Prota says that's expected from a magic fighter, he really learns fast. Fafnir says he should memorize this too. When our boy grabs the book and starts reading, he acquires the basic Verdian spear skill. He knows that if he manages to learn this, he will be able to learn the Death Spiral. The Death Spiral is a skill developed by the British spear saint, based on the Verdian spear skills. Normally, it was a technique that wouldn't be perfected for many years, but he is going to go ahead and perfect it in this life. Very confident, he thinks this is the true purpose and privilege of a regressor, and he will gladly accept it. At this moment, he is already using the basic Verdian spear skills. He thinks skill books really are the best. He mastered the basic spear skills in just an instant, and apparently there are 6 forms, pretty straightforward. But to Ryoga's surprise, Fafnir jumps jumps back and charges at him. He says that just as the master said, he is excellent at teaching others, and martial arts are learned by experiencing them with their own bodies. So now they should start their practical training. After Fafnir attacks our prota, he comments that Ryoga dodged that pretty well, and that his movements aren't that bad, but he should know that he will never get used to the spear if all he does is dodge. On the other hand, the prota says that if someone gets attacked out of nowhere, normally a person just dodges it, and asks if by any chance he's holding a grudge because he gave him a smack on the head earlier. But Fafnir replies no, never, and that this is purely educational. Thus he explains that this is practical training, and when an enemy comes at you with the intent to kill, he asks if he is going to beg for his life just because he learned something recently, which leaves our boy quite irritated. Just like that, the half-dragon goes after him again. In Ryoga's mind, he thinks Fafnir can come at him, but he is going to give it his all right now. Thus, he activates the basic style of the Verdian spearman style, using the third form, rotational defense. Right off the bat, he manages to defend against the spear strike and gets pretty hyped about it, but unfortunately, he was very foolish, because Fafnir simply raised his spear and struck him right in the chest, knocking the wind out of him. The Draconian says that taking the first hit means it's over. Everything is over. Basically, he would be dead in a real fight, so he shouldn't lower his guard completely. On the other hand, Ryoga says he should have blocked the strike perfectly, so why did he lose? Fafnir explains that he managed to block the first attack perfectly, but he still needs to block the second one properly. But our boy, looking quite annoyed, says he did it right, and asks if it isn't just because Fafnir is stronger than him, period. Fafnir says he appropriately adjusted his strength for the battle, which makes our boy even more annoyed, saying he gets it then. Since he wants to go at it like this, he will also go all out and it won't be like before. Thus he activates life drain, enhancing his body using the absorbed energy. Following that, he activates the fourth form of the basic Verdian spear style, the Axis strike, and he already charges at Fafnir, who easily blocks the strike. But our prota thinks, alright. He doesn't have a second attack, so the next one is a counter attack. But he was very foolish again because, once more, he was defeated by the Draconian. Finally, after some time when he wakes up, Fafnir explains that just a moment ago, he only thought about defending the second attack, so he failed to properly block the first one. Then, our boy thinks he will get it right and activates life drain once more, while Fafnir charges at him with everything he's got, telling him to do it right this time. And our prota truly goes all out, activating all of his strength. Some time has passed, and at a Korean barbecue joint, our boy and that friend of his from the group are chilling and eating, but Yuma asks what happened to him because Ryoga looks completely beaten up. Our boy says a lot of things happened, and trying hard to stay calm, says he had to deal with this. Through Ryoga's ring, Fafnir says that fighting him to the very end without passing out was indeed quite impressive. And he mentions that training with him is pretty fun, but he ended up putting too much strength into it, which leaves our boy pretty annoyed because he knows the Draconian really enjoyed being able to beat him up freely like it was nothing. Fafnir comments that he won't disagree with that, but he can just say the word if he wants to stop. But our boy says he wouldn't have started if he was just going to give up immediately like that. He explains that he can enhance his physical abilities with life drain, but it would be a waste to rely solely on muscle mass growth and boosted stats. With martial arts, he can become even stronger than before his regression. But, sitting across from him, his friend, looking very scared by that face, says that Ryoga is really creeping him out right now. Changing the subject, our boy thanks Yuma for the 15 million in 3 days, which is incredible. The guy says he can call them if a new opportunity comes up. Ryoga mentions that, speaking of which, he wants to know if there's any news regarding hunters. His friend mentions that Haibara has been patrolling the hunter net, and what they've been hearing recently is about the mysterious death of Kamakura, along with the Kagoshima portal and the serial killer hunter. Hearing this, Ryoga thinks it seems there are no incidents that will make him stronger quickly. Since he somewhat remembers the main incidents that occurred before the regression, he was hoping there would be something minor, but apparently there is nothing. The friend comments that besides that, there is the portal called the Forgotten Temple in Wakayama. Our boy asks him, what do you mean Forgotten Temple? Yuma explains that the Horizon Guild hasn't been able to clear it for almost a year, and word is there's about to be a break. Soon, our boy starts thinking about the types of portals, like the static portal, where everything is fine as long as you reduce the number of monsters that appear periodically. But the fluid portal breaks when the mana density exceeds 100%, and a break occurs when the clearing fails right before the mana density hits 100%, and monsters spill into the real world. His friend says that since the portal entered a critical state, the Horizon Guild lifted the entry restrictions so even regular hunters can enter now. Ryoga asks if he heard anything about the participants from the major guilds. Yuma mentions that the second-ranked Phoenix Guild and the third-ranked Daybreaker Guild are showing interest in this portal. With that, he starts remembering that, before his regression, the Phoenix Guild obtained an epic grade artifact, the Dragon Scale scale armor, and the exact place they got it was in the Forgotten Temple. So, he gets really hyped thinking that the portal hasn't been cleared yet, which means that learning to wield spears and still getting the dragon scale armor is the best possible outcome. He stands up immediately and tells his friend to contact the others, telling them they will meet up tomorrow and that they should set up tents as well. Finally, the next day, in front of a massive gate, the so-called Forgotten Temple, fluid type, with mana density at 93%. Amidst the campsites, Haibara says that hunters from all over the country have been gathering since Horizon lifted the restrictions. Thus, he asks Ryoga if they shouldn't pitch their tent too. But our boy says no, because they'll be spending their time inside the portal, so they don't need one. But Yuka, standing nearby, mentions that they only brought rations for 5 days, and asks if it's going to be okay. In the back, Haibara says that isn't enough, and that clearing a portal in 5 days that not even Horizon could handle is impossible. But, to their surprise, Ryoga tells them he's going to finish this in 5 days, so it's not a problem. But at that moment, up ahead, Haibara points in a certain direction and says that she is the next sword saint of Phoenix, Asaka Mire. Looking at her, Ryoga remembers that's exactly it. Asaka was the one who found a method to clear the portal and get the dragon scale armor. And before his regression, she was praised for her talent, surpassing the Phoenix Guild and the master Marita Takumi, but she was a tragic genius who lost everything due to an incident during a portal raid. Next to him, Yuma says there's another guy too, and apparently Gouda is participating for Daybreaker. Our boy also remembers him, Gouda Gaishin, and according to his title Iron Fist, he is recognized as one of the powerhouse representatives of Japan. Ryoga keeps thinking about how all these future celebrities are gathering in one place, and looking a bit worried about this, Yuma wants to know if they'll really be able to clear the portal before them. But our Prota, highly confident, tells them not to worry so much about it because they will do things their own way. He starts thinking that in the Forgotten Temple with the dragon scale armor, he is definitely going to be the one who clears it all with his own hands and takes everything for himself. Thus, he calls his group to start the portal raid. So now, after they enter the portal to the Forgotten Temple, the 4 of them appear in an isolated area. Very quickly, our boy calls Fafnir, summoning him in front of everyone. Very surprised by this, Yuma says he thought he was going to turn the imprisoned spirits near the border into undead and subjugate them. He says that it doesn't matter how many times he sees it, it is truly incredible. Next to them, Yuka says she's mentioning this now, but they were so weak that she was really shocked when she saw them at the workshop earlier, and asks if he isn't planning to turn them into undead as well. But right behind them, our Prota approaches, telling them not to think he'll kill just anyone only to turn them into undead. He says they are too weak and that any random zombie is much better than them, which leaves the kid wondering what he's going to gain from this. But our Prota tells him to stop worrying about these things, which have no importance whatsoever, because now they are inside the raid and the fight is finally going to begin. The instant he says this, the entire place starts to shake. Even Fafnir gets scared, noticing that the terrain is changing. He asks if everything is going to be okay. Yuka in the back says that's exactly it. The entry requirement here is only up to 3 stars. But the reason the difficulty is 3 stars is because once a day, the internal structure changes and the environment and monsters completely transform. Soon, Ryoga gets very serious and thinks that therefore, the portal's traits also haven't changed from his regression. And soon he tells Fafnir that he will leave the vanguard to him. Right after, he uses the impure blessing and the wedge of retaliation. Fafnir, much more powerful now, says that protecting his weak master is also the duty of his right-hand man, so he shouldn't worry about it. Later, taking charge of the vanguard, Fafnir moves forward. But finally he stops, informing them that there is something ahead. As soon as they see it, it's a large monster. And in the back, Yuma says they are fallen cultists. That cultist already charges at them. Fafnir blocks the monster's strike, while Yuma explains that fallen cultists are formidable enemies and they should back him up. But, to his surprise, Fafnir is much stronger than he thought he would be and manages to throw him to the ground easily. With a powerful punch, he finishes the monster off. With that smug little smirk on his face, he says that was too easy. But, in the back, Ryoga says that if he breaks their heads, he won't be able to turn them into undead, so he should be careful next time. The Draconian says that's true and that he understands. Now a few more cultists appear on the other side, charging at them again. Fafnir, ready, says that now he will continue fighting against these monsters. On the other hand, our Prota says he will join in too. Thus he activates the effects of the Staff of Resentment and his mana consumption drops by 12%. He triggers bone control, and several bone daggers fly towards the cultists, hitting several of them at once. Seeing this, Ryoga thinks that fallen cultists have low elemental resistance. Attacking them with dark and holy attributes will cause fatal damage, and this way their attack speed is reduced. Taking advantage of this, Fafnir charges, saying he doesn't know why, but the enemy's speed dropped a lot, and now is his chance. After he defeats the first one, he mentally gives thanks for the training with Aragiri. Because of that, he is starting to get used to charging at the enemy as a vanguard, and is getting better and better at it. Finally, after he defeats them all, our boy says he forgot to use Life Drain on them. Fafnir replies that he wouldn't be able to use Life Drain if he didn't want him to right there. The Prota asks why he said that out of of nowhere. The Draconian asks if he doesn't even have to say a thank you for his help. Our Prota, quite annoyed, really didn't think the moment would come when he would miss the old Kashiwagi. Interrupting his thoughts, the system pops up, informing that he leveled up to level 20. And with that, new knowledge was engraved into his soul. The first is the C-rank Dark Sage, which is a spiritual power spell. And the next is the Dark Realm, also C-rank, where the spiritual power consumption to maintain the undead is reduced by 20%. Soon our boy thinks that these are the perfect skills for 5 long days of constant battle in the Forgotten Temple. After thinking about it for a bit, he walks over to the corpses and orders them to answer his call. In this way, he creates a few more new zombies, with stats boosted by 100%. Next to him, Yuma comments that fallen cultists have higher base stats than orcs, so he wants to know if they will turn into stronger zombies. But our Prota says no, the materials are important, but the type of spell you engrave on them is even more important. Which obviously leaves Yuma very lost with the explanation. Ryoga concludes that this means there isn't a huge difference in their stats, and more importantly, they will now speed up the pace of exploration because this temple is way too big. Thus, many hours of fighting happen against these fallen cultists. Every time they move forward, more cultists appear. Our Prota is very annoyed with this bunch of monsters because apparently they never end. But once again, to their surprise, the structure of the temple starts changing. Yuma warns that they have to get out of there fast so they can reach the safe room. But remembering something, Ryoga tells him to hold on a moment. He remembers the future interview when they asked the hunter Asaka if she could share her method to close the portal. She explained that normal portals can be cleared by defeating the boss, but the Forgotten Temple requires a special method to reach the boss. She explained that there are 3 types of monsters that appear in the temple, and when you defeat them, they drop 3 tokens. If you collect 49 of these tokens and place them on some specific pillars, you can reach the room where the boss is. Then our boy remembers that the monster is an eye, which means that's the thing coming next. And now, with the 5 of them standing in front of the giant eye, surrounded by a very dark aura, the eye finally opens and begins to stare at them. Our boy remembers that this is a demonic eye, and it looks exactly like the pattern on the pillar. Right after the demonic eye stares at them, it suddenly starts glowing out of nowhere, and a massive beam of energy shoots out of it towards everyone. Furthermore, our boy remembers that he knows its attack patterns very well. Thus, he activates his skill and blocks the eye's strike, and the skill rebounds the attack, hitting the monster's own eye. Right after, demonstrating the sheer scale of his power, he blows that eye to pieces. Ryoga thinks that a bone shield made using bone control won't break that easily, thanks to Shintani's spell which he engraved for him. The bones are holding their shape nice and strong. But, once again, the eye reappears, attacking our Prota once more, which leaves him a bit worried since he couldn't block it this time. But fortunately, Fafnir steps in blocking the eye's strike and asks his master to stay behind him, because he is going to block everything. Soon, another trail of light appears, but as soon as it hits his body, something shocking happens. Absolutely nothing happened, because Fafnir doesn't have a single scratch on his body. Our Prota, looking very confident in the back, says he went through a lot of trouble to build that. And yeah, a 2-star attack isn't going to melt his scales. Fafnir, looking pretty hyped, says that's what it looks like, which means that, well, he has nothing to fear. Without a second thought, he charges at that giant eye, wanting to crush it to pieces with a single punch. After he defeats it, he asks if the master is going to turn that into an undead as well. But our boy replies no, because if he turns it into an undead, its main weapon, the eye, will become useless. Fafnir asks what he means by the eye, and if he really needs something so gross. The Prota explains that this is the token needed to clear the portal. Right after he removes the token, other monsters appear, which genuinely look like they came straight out of a horror movie. Watching this, Yuka in the back mentions that mask gives her the creeps, and Yuma says that this time it is a masked mimic, which possesses the curse of decay. But, ready for the fight, Fafnir doesn't think it's a big deal. However, he finally notices an aura creeping up his back and asks what that is. The system informs that it is the curse of decay, where the masked mimic has reduced Fafnir's stats. Our boy asks if he wants him to use the impure blessing, but the Draconian asks him to wait a moment. Fafnir asks if curses share the same dark attribute as spiritual power. Our boy says that's exactly right. Then his right-hand man says that if it is a curse, it is a dark attribute attack, and he should be able to suppress it with his own spiritual power, which is stronger than the curse. So, like it's nothing, Fafnir breaks the curse of decay all by himself, which truly surprises Ryoga. He thinks that an undead spiritual power is the highest tier of magic among the dark attributes and can also absorb most curses. But to realize that through pure instinct, he is indeed incredibly talented. But right in front of them, realizing its curse failed, that monster attacks Fafnir. Before the Draconian could do anything, our boy says he wants to test something too. He activates the impure blessing. Fafnir is shocked by the master's blessing connecting to him, using him as a medium. He completely understands what his master is planning to do. Ryoga wants to reverse the flow of holy power through the curse he placed on him. This way, if that mimic's attack hits Fafnir, the monster will suffer suffer a rebound effect. Our boy explains that holy attributes are incredibly effective against dark ones. After all, he is still a priest. And now that the test is over, the monster can kiss its miserable life goodbye. So, using his bones, he finishes off the masked mimic. Right after, he picks up its mask, which is also a token. Hovering over Ryoga, Mini Kronos asks if he wanted that mask and comments that he indeed has terrible taste, but only our boy knows that this mask is the key to unlocking the secrets of the Forgotten Temple. He thinks about the cultist boss, a demonic eye, and a mimic mask. If he manages to get these 3 tokens and place them on that specific pillar in the temple, he can do exactly what Asaka did, and access the secret room where the boss is hiding. And the tricky part is being careful not to destroy the tokens when you defeat the monsters. Kronos says that is a problematic condition. Our boy thinks that this is exactly the reason why this place hasn't been cleared in almost a year. But even though he has no idea how Asaka figured out this condition, all he can do now is reap the benefits all by himself. But at that moment, Haibara shows up, telling Ryoga it looks like the Phoenix Guild is fighting nearby. When our boy turns around, he notices that they are indeed fighting several monsters. And right in the center of the formation is Asaka herself, killing her first masked mimic. Kronos watches the scene and says they cut the curse right in half, and asks if they channeled aura into their blades to cut it with such precision. But Ryoga knows that this is the effect of the Gale Sword. But if she hadn't hit the curse's weak point dead center, she would have been the one to take the damage. Apparently, Asaka's skills are truly impressive. So, at that moment, Ryoga tells everyone they are going to pick up the pace. But, in the back, Asaka watches them walking in a certain direction. One of the guild members asks if she's curious about that team. She mentions that the leader uses an undead as a summon and that their movements show absolutely zero hesitation, and that maybe they might have figured out the mystery to clear this portal. But the background guild member says it's a mystery that not even Horizon could figure out. How could people like them have figured it out just like that? He thinks they are probably just killing monsters recklessly, and that's it. But Asaka thinks it's impossible to move without hesitation in a portal full of mysteries, and that guy definitely knows something. Noticing a stare so intense it was practically drilling a hole in the back of his head, our boy turns around and glares at her. Meanwhile, Asaka thinks that for some reason she has a feeling they will cross paths with them again. And now, after some time in an open area, after defeating several other cultists, our boy starts thinking that 5 days have already passed since they began raiding the Forgotten Temple, and enemies just keep spawning non-stop. Looking a bit worried about this, Yuma asks if this isn't even worse than near the border. The kid next to him says the monsters are spawning infinitely. At that moment, they hear a noise once again, which is basically just more monsters, but Fafnir quickly charges forward, telling them to take this and easily defeating both of them. Watching everything very hyped, Kronos says that unlike his contractor, Fafnir is very brave and has what it takes to be a hero. But the Prota ends up thinking that he is also fighting for his life out there, and so he orders his zombies to give him cover. After the fight is over, he uses Life Drain and finally levels up to level 27. He gets really excited, commenting about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Kronos warns him that he already told him to stop with that evil laugh, because he has absolutely no class when doing it. Meanwhile, our Prota simply tells him not to dictate how people should act. But Kronos expects the person he chose to have at least a little bit of class. Not wanting to argue with him anymore, our boy walks over to the pillars and places the 3 tokens. He thinks these are the last ones, and he finally has all 48 tokens placed in total. Apparently, it seems like those guys from Phoenix and Daybreaker have already left, and since they are here, they might as well clear the portal too. At that moment, he turns to the others and tells them to go sell the magic stones. Yuma asks about him, and Ryoga replies that he's going to stay a little longer to level up. Yuma and the others say they understand. Finally, after they leave, the only ones left are our Prota, Fafnir, and his skeleton army. When they finally take a step forward in the temple, the scenery begins to change once again. Fafnir comments that the layout changed this time and that he doesn't see the Phoenix Guild around either. He asks if they shouldn't head back soon, but our boy says no, because now is the time they are going to clear this place. Very confused, Fafnir asks what he means by that and if there are actually other conditions for clearing it. The Prota says that of course there are, and for that they need to place the tokens on the pillars in this specific pattern. Fafnir finally realizes that this is why he was collecting those things and calling them tokens. The Prota explains that the zombies don't have the brains for this, so they have to place them themselves. At that moment, Ryoga turns around and warns him that he's going to need him to run a lot. But at the last second, he notices something strange coming running in his direction. It's probably the boss, already attacking one of his zombies. He quickly realizes the dungeon is transforming much faster than he thought it would be, and that they will be truly screwed if they don't make it to the next area right away. He starts looking from side to side, wondering where the location of the last pillar is. In the back, Fafnir shouts that he found the pillar, but as all good things come to a quick end, a massive explosion happens exactly where our prota is, forcing him to run for his life. He finally reaches Fafnir, telling him to throw the tokens. As soon as they are thrown, the Draconian catches the tokens, landing in front of the pillar and placing them in order. Very annoyed, our boy asks why they can't move forward, and that at this rate they will end up getting crushed. But, incredible as it seems, something finally happens and the entire scenery changes again, with those pillars glowing in blue. Our prota is finally safe, sighs, and says it stopped. Meanwhile, Fafnir warns his master that a path to the underground has appeared. Our boy says they can go in now. While heading down the stairs, Ryoga comments that he really thought they were going to be lost in that place. Fafnir, dropping into this room, comments that it seems to be something very secret. Our boy mentions that they made it this far, but the real fight starts now. Very hyped, the Draconian says they are going to defeat the boss. After some time, they finally arrive at the boss room. His name is the Masked Man, the Guardian of Death. Fafnir comments that this is the boss room then, and our boy says the vibe is pretty sinister. But, without overthinking it, he opens the door and they come face to face with a very strange monster, which is a mix of the 3 monsters they have already faced. Fafnir, surprised by this, says it's a pretty terrifying being. The prota says that's exactly right, but just like the previous monster, this one also launches a ranged attack straight at Ryoga. Fafnir steps in front, saying he's not going to beat him like that. He immediately activates the Dark Aura, the personification of spiritual power, clashing against that beam of power and warning that he won't let him lay a single finger on his master. But this time the power is different, because the large magic circle, with an eye in the middle, starts staring at our boy from afar. Instantly Ryoga realizes it is a curse, and apparently this monster is much stronger than he thought it would be. Up ahead, Fafnir asks what is happening and what's wrong with him. But that monster in front of them, incredible as it seems, can actually speak, and calls him a foolish human, saying he is going to kill all of them. But, to the monster's surprise, our boy is 100% fine. He says that apparently the boss is having a lot of fun, and asks if it isn't lonely keeping all that fun to himself. Then he suggests he lets him join in too, already blocking the curse by activating Clear Mind, a skill where mental attacks are completely resisted. Right after, he activates the Impure Blessing, a holy spell, rebounding the power of that ugly monster. Curious about what he did, Fafnir asks what he meant by that. Our boy says he just channeled a bit of holy power into him, and tells Fafnir to show him what he is capable of. At that moment, a ball of energy appears in front of that monster's eye. That energy ball starts getting bigger and bigger, until finally he throws it at Fafnir. But right then, the Draconian activates the Dark Battle Chi, the leg strength enhancement, making him dodge the strike very quickly and immediately charge at that huge monster, who keeps attacking him more and more. But he keeps dodging the strikes. The monster, being incredibly stupid, orders him not to run, but Fafnir obviously doesn't care at all and already appears right behind his back. And now he switches his Dark Battle Chi to the Iron Fist enhancement. Right on the monster's legs, he blows a massive hole. But unfortunately, the monster manages to regenerate, which greatly surprises Fafnir. Right after, the monster lets out a laugh because he finally manages to infect his opponent. The system informs that Fafnir's body is collapsing due to the Masked Man's skills, ectoplasm and foul skin. From afar, our boy comments that he figured as much. Thus, he activates the Impure Blessing again, and the collapsing body starts being restored. Taking advantage of that opening, the monster attacks, but Fafnir manages to dodge the strike and immediately lands another punch on the giant monster's legs. Now he uses the Canic Combat Arts, Chapter 7, the 10 consecutive strikes. Finally, with the last and most powerful strike, he destroys the monster's leg, making him feel a lot of pain. But the monster is completely in shock and asks why the curse isn't working. Full of hatred, he turns to Fafnir, telling him he must die. But the Draconian mocks his face, saying he is way too slow, his knees are full of holes, and his movements are getting slower and slower. But, from a distance, he notices that his legs started regenerating again, and very quickly at that. He comments to his master that his regeneration is a pain, so he asks what they should do. Our boy asks, "What do you mean, what should we do? They need to finish this all at once." Thus, he activates Bone Control again and launches the attack straight at the monster's legs. This bizarre giant monster tells him to stop aiming at the same spot, calling him a coward, and says he is definitely going to die right there, already activating the curse formula, the Black Wave. Up ahead, Fafnir tries to block that wave, but our prota, standing behind him, summons his armored zombies and activates the defensive formation, blocking that monster's wave. Taking advantage of this opening, our boy charges at him and with his hand extended toward one of its faces, activates the Wedge of Retaliation, temporarily locking the enemy's movements. Seizing this chance, he calls Fafnir, who with a massive leap charges at that giant monster and once again activates the Conic Combat Arts, Chapter 5, the Fatal Crushing Blow. Aiming right at that giant monster's eye, he finally defeats activates it. The system pops up again, announcing that he gained a massive amount of experience and leveled up twice. Our boy, on the other hand, says that's not bad for an opening, but still a bit curious about it. Fafnir asks if he wasn't supposed to be the main attraction. The prota says the real attraction is that altar right back there. After they get there, Fafnir comments that it is indeed a great armor. The prota agrees, instantly recognizing it as the Transcendent Grade Dragon Scale Armor. Classification: Armor. Durability: 5000. This armor is made from dragon bones, a growth-type artifact featuring auto-repair and natural durability recovery. Obviously, our boy gets very hyped, because he is going to accept this without hesitation. He notices that apparently he can equip it just by touching it, and so that armor integrates with his own clothes and body. Ryoga, looking very excited, says this item is way better than he imagined. Because of it, his impact resistance is level 12 and his magic resistance is level 7, while his agility increased by 10%, which means it adapts to whatever he envisions it to be, and when he activates it, he becomes completely armored. Fafnir, pumped up, says that now he doesn't need to hold back during spear training anymore. Ryoga asks why, and he replies that he was holding back because he thought he might hurt his master, but with an armor like that, it's a whole different story. Ryoga, looking bothered, asks if it's just him or if Fafnir seems way too happy about being able to punch him now. Fafnir starts laughing out loud, asking him not to be so ridiculous, and stating his only desire is to make his master stronger. Our boy just accepts this lame excuse and says that now that he got what he came for, they can head back because this raid has been cleared. But while walking back, he notices something lying on the ground which dropped from the masked man's corpse. Our boy, feeling confused, wonders what that is. Later, outside the portal, the people around notice that notification about the Forgotten Temple being subjugated, and that the portal will be sealed in 3 minutes. Soon, the hunters are completely shocked by this, commenting that they really can't believe the boss was defeated out of nowhere like that. They wonder if it was the Phoenix Guild or someone else, but they conclude that if it were them, they would already be holding a press conference right now. So they wonder if maybe it was Daybreaker. Right behind Ryoga, Yuma appears, saying that his leader is safe then. He mentions he heard this place was cleared. Our boy confirms it, saying yes, because he was the one who did it. Yuma says exactly, and that everyone is looking for the person who solved the portal problem. But finally, he realizes what Ryoga just said to him and, completely shocked, asks him to hold on a second and explain this story properly. And he, completely in shock, asks if he's really saying that he was the one who cleared the Forgotten Temple just like that. But obviously he is very stupid and starts shouting for everyone to hear, which makes our prota very pissed, telling him he speaks way too loud. Realizing this, Yuma whispers that if he was the first to clear the Forgotten Temple and they announce it to the media, he will become a celebrity overnight. But our boy replies that it's a secret, and that he hates being the center of attention. Besides, he is going to add the boss rewards to the deal. But the three of them say they didn't participate in it, and receiving that cut would weigh heavily on their consciences, which leaves Ryoga a bit surprised, because they didn't even ask what the boss dropped. What he gained from that boss raid was a shadow mask, on which multiple curses are engraved. He also gained the thrill of the hunt, which designates a cursed opponent as prey, allowing tracking up to 10 kilometers away. So our boy thinks he can't give away the artifact he got at the end, so he thinks about compensating them with money. He tells everyone he is not going to say this twice, but Yuma replies that his answer won't change, no matter how many times he repeats it. Realizing that this guy is truly reliable, our boy says he got what he wanted, so they can head back now. While they were leaving, in another location, that guy from Daybreaker goes up to Asuka and asks if they were the ones who cleared the Forgotten Temple, but the girl replies that she would also like to know that and asks if it wasn't them. She says that if Phoenix had cleared it, they would have announced it immediately. Gouda says that right when they finished their preparations, suddenly, it's cleared. He really doesn't get it. On the other hand, the girl starts wondering if it wasn't Daybreaker, then who the hell did it? And could it really have been that guy? But she thinks no, that would be impossible. Little did she know that it was indeed him. Still on the same day, but now at the alchemist's workshop. The five of them walk through it, while Yuma mentions that the workshop looks a bit chaotic. At that moment, the alchemist comes running, asking who the hell did that, and our boy asks if Aragiri arrived, saying it was about time. The kid, in shock, asks if he really knew about this and if it was his doing. But well, he was already expecting that. The prota says he was worried about the marketing, so he gave him a little hand, but the alchemist asks if he has any idea how hard that was. Besides Aragiri, people have been approaching him from all sides every single day, pressuring him daily to sell the potions, and during the preparations for the patent application, he really thought he was going to die. Our boy, a bit confused, asks if it was a bother, but the kid replies no. Thanks to him, it served as great advertising. But our boy knows that what matters are the results, and things went well overall, even if it was a bit of work for him. So the curious guy asks what the progress is. The alchemist says that the patent for the intermediate potion is almost ready, and the mass-produced versions are almost ready as well. Oh, and he remembers something. These were the things Ryoga ordered, and they just arrived. Our boy boy, seeing that, thanks him, saying they are very rare orbs and it must have been very hard to find them. But the alchemist says that the fact that Dark Mage is an unpopular class helped a lot. This item he ordered is an Orb of Darkness, which enhances the user when used by a Dark Mage or a similar class. Thinking for a bit, our boy tells Fafnir to stay right there. The Draconian asks if he plans to pull more of his tricks, but our boy asks him please to stop making such misleading comments, already grabbing the orb and placing it on his chest. Surprised by this strange power, Fafnir asks what that is. Ryoga explains that he is using the orb's power to increase the synchronization rate between Kashiwagi's soul and the Draconian corpse, and because of the item, the completion rate of the Eldritch Dragon increased by 7%. Fafnir comments that the transformation is still incomplete, but our boy asks why it is still incomplete, explaining that if he breaks the orb, he basically dies. Then he grabs the orb and throws it against the wall. Terrified, Fafnir lunges at it to catch it, while our boy praises him, saying he made a great catch. Maybe this is because the synchronization rate increased, since his reaction speed seems much faster than before. But the pseudo-dragon asks what he would have done if he had died, since according to what Ryoga said, he would die if that broke. Our boy replies that he would only know if the product was defective or not by seeing how it behaved after use. The pseudo-dragon says he is in fact an absolute demon. The proto just replies, all right, turns to the others and asks Yuma if he can ask them to collect some magic stones again. The three reply that of course they can, and ask if they should gather them as usual. Our boy says exactly, and explains he needs the corpse to keep its original shape. Yuma asks if he is going to turn this corpse into an undead as well. But our boy says no, what he is planning to make next is a golem. Very surprised, Yuma asks if he is going to make a golem out of this corpse. Our boy explains that his level isn't high enough yet to create high-quality undead, which is why he is thinking about making a golem next. He knows that of course he would need an alchemist and materials, and that he has already secured a high-level alchemist. Just him thinking about it makes his friend very scared. He also knows that the only thing missing now is gathering the materials. Some time has passed and our proto went to another location, the so-called Marco Zero. He remembers that this area was previously known as the Saizu Outlet, which became a lawless zone after the Great Change. It's a place where people will do anything as long as you pay them enough. Fafnir, truly curious about this, asks his master if he is sure about that place. Our boy replies that for now, yes. The pseudo-dragon comments that he has a very peculiar taste and that he didn't know he liked old bars. But Ryoga explains that he has business to handle with the manager there, Madame Shuri. Publicly, she is a bar owner, but in reality, she is a broker who mediates underground deals. He really doesn't know how much the Madame has expanded her business by this point, at least in this timeline, but she should at least have what he wants right now. Thus, the two enter the bar, which is apparently destroyed. Fafnir comments that it looks like there was a fight there, and apparently not too long ago, something very recent. Our boy walks up to a guy lying on the floor and asks where the manager is. The guy, startled, asks who he is. Our boy repeats the question, but the background guy, pissed off, asks if he really thought he would tell him that and demands that Ryoga introduce himself first. But a few seconds after getting beaten up by them, the guy says that the madam isn't there, that she escaped over 30 minutes ago, and that his comrades are tracking her. He says he truly doesn't know anything else. Fafnir comments that 30 minutes have already passed and it will be very hard to catch up to her. But our boy says there's no problem, because he can use the shadow mask for soul tracking. Thus, the two start following her trail. Finally, they track Madame Shuri's soul and arrive at a specific spot in the alleys, where Madame Shuri is running for her life as she is being chased by other guys. Mid-run, she wonders why the Red Spider Syndicate is chasing her out of nowhere like this, and apparently she shouldn't have done anything to draw the attention of such a massive group like the Red Spider. But now there isn't much to do, and she doesn't know the reason, she only knows it will be bad if she gets caught. But unfortunately, in the end, she gets cornered by 5 guys. Right behind them, another guy appears saying, geez, she made us sweat to catch up to her. But Madame Shuri quickly draws her dagger and says he will get hurt if he underestimates her. The guy is very confident and tells her to stop bluffing, because she doesn't even have any mana left. Showing confidence, at least on the outside, she asks why he doesn't find out for himself if it's a bluff or not. But while those guys were approaching her, our boy shows up, saying that a nice crowd has gathered around here and from what he can see, she is putting on a pretty interesting show. And after he appears, everyone stares at him wondering who this guy is. The blue-haired guy says that outsiders should stay out of this. But the one who appears right behind Ryoga is Fafnir himself. And our boy says he is surprisingly friendly, giving him advice and all that. But the background guy, very pissed, tells him not to be so arrogant just because he has a summon. And so he orders his guys to grab that man. But before they could advance, Fafnir is faster and defeats them easily, sending everyone flying. Soon he grabs 2 more and defeats them very easily as well. But, very pissed, their boss asks asks why he is meddling in this. He immediately activates his maximum firepower, and Madame Shuri, looking worried, tells him to be careful with that. Meanwhile, the background guy says full of hatred that he is going to turn him into ashes. After his firepower hits Ryoga, everyone gets very arrogant and hyped. But to their shock, neither Ryoga nor Fafnir suffered a single scratch because they activated the dark battle chi. The background guy, completely in shock, asks how he is unharmed and how the hell his fire isn't working on him, but unfortunately he is too weak to understand things and instantly takes a massive punch to the face. Fafnir says the world is very big and he should remember that very well. Then finally our boy reappears and asks if it's over. Fafnir, over in the corner, just laughs out loud. Watching that guy in the corner, our boy realizes that before his regression, the burn on the madam's face was caused by this guy. Apparently that must be the story. He stares at the madam and realizes that this time, because of him, she will be fine. At that moment, another guy appears. It's an old man who looks like a butler, apologizing to his madame. Worried, he asks what happened there. She replies that she doesn't know and that it was the red spider that attacked out of nowhere. From the corner of his eye, our boy stares at that old man. He recognizes that this guy looks pretty strong too, and wonders if by any chance he is a bodyguard. A bit confused, the old man stares at the two and asks who they are. She says she isn't sure, but they don't seem like bad people. So she turns around and thanks the two of them. But our boy says he only came here to grab a drink. But since there was no one in the bar, he ended up following her. He reaches out his hand and she, looking worried, steps back, but he tells her to stay still. At that moment, he activates Life Drain, restoring the target's HP and fully healing the madam. Surprised, she asks if by any chance he is a priest. Our boy replies that it's something like that, something similar, except flying in the air right behind him, Kronos is cracking up, saying he should know he is using one of his spells. Later on, back at the madam's bar, she asks if he wants a drink. He replies that he wants milk on the rocks. She asks if that's some kind of joke, but says that if he doesn't like alcohol, she will serve him coffee. As soon as she serves it, she asks what his purpose is for being there. He replies that he wants a ticket to the underground auction, which surprises the madam. Instantly, she says she will give him one of her business cards instead of the tickets. She tells him that if he shows that, no one in Marco Zero except the red spider should mess with him. By the way, she asks what exactly he is looking for at the auction. While Fafnir in the corner chills and sips his drink, Ryoga replies that he wants a mana engine with an output of 3 stars or higher. She, a bit confused about this, says she's not sure if he can find one of those there, even at the underground auction. Our boy replies that he knows that, but thinks that if he can't find it there, he'll have no choice but to clear a portal that gives him a mana engine, which is going to be a huge pain. At that moment, she interrupts him and asks if he wouldn't like to take on a commission. The system shows something that is kind of like a magic contract, where the client is Madame Shuri, the job type is clearing a portal, the difficulty is C rank, and the reward is the MIS4 mana engine. Soon, our boy thinks that this woman is quite scary. He was trying to crush the red spider the moment they attacked her. She tells him she only said that because she wasn't sure if the auction would have one, and from the start she never said she didn't own one, which makes our boy laugh, already asking if she is asking him to handle the revenge mission against the red spider. He warns her that the red spider is one of the biggest organizations in Marco Zero, and if he messes with them, he will be targeted, but she says there won't be any problems if they simply eliminate them. Apparently, he needs a mana engine while she wants the red spider gone. It's a win-win situation. Our boy thinks that the maximum output of an MIS4, a high-level mana engine, is 5 stars, which isn't bad at all. Thus, he tells her he will include 10 kilos of arachne silk as a bonus. She replies that this will be on the house, so the prota says he is in and definitely accepts this job. But she mentions that from what she saw earlier, she thinks they are around 3 stars and asks if they have a higher level. He replies that actually he is only at 1 star, which leaves her completely in shock. After that, in another location, still in Marco Zero, but now at the ant cave, right at the portal entrance. A portal that is guarded by several guys. Hiding in the corner is the madame, dressing in a way that is not flashy at all for a combatant. At that moment, she stabs her dagger into the ground and a magic circle appears around her, creating an illusory barrier around that entire area. This is one of her skills, called the butterfly dream. Meanwhile, in the restricted area, the guys are communicating with the west side, saying everything is clear and updating on the situation. But unfortunately, he gets no answer. What he didn't know was that there was a giant Fafnir right behind his back, killing him very easily. And on the west side, there was that old man from before, killing the other guys. Just a few seconds later, the entire secret area is cleared. Now in front of the portal, our boy comments that the strong always win, and that those red spider weaklings were wiped out in an instant. But the madam, still a bit worried, asks if he really intends to go in alone, without a party. She asks him to be careful. Meanwhile, our boy walks into the ant cave without a second thought, telling her he will be right back.